I didn't hear you.
Good evening. It is 7:32. We're going to say the pledge and we're going to go into our session. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This flag, the American flag, is supposed to be from every other flag. And somebody who walks with us in forward, okay. Exactly. Supposed to be in the front, like.
Actually supposed to be to the right.
I think it's not. I didn't know there were rules. I think American flags have rules about how they're done and whatever. Okay, so we've started. Everything's cool. Do you have any announcements? You said no. Do you have any announcements?
No.
Okay. Let me just read this. So just wanted to congratulate the municipality. We are very big about the importance of trees, especially in a river town where the trees actually function like the lungs. They clean the air, take in the bad, put out the good. It's really important for human existence. And as we do more and more development up and down the Hudson Valley in the New York area, maintaining and planting trees. So last year we planted about 80 trees between the two, or was it the year before? 2 years ago. Oh my God, time's flying. Anyway, we became a tree city, even though technically we're not a city. Hello, Deputy Mayor. Hi. Didn't miss anything yet. So we did get notification today that we continue to do good work as far as the environment goes, and that we are can't read because I don't have my glasses on. Totally spacing out. Okay, here we go. So another small step that we made is that we are we're involved in, I don't know how to explain it, that we're part of the New York Grid Service Program and participate in that. So you participate in the grid and you lower your energy consumption and heighten it depending on the weather conditions and all that. We get a small refund every year, and it also goes towards points towards our environmental sort of rubric that they use. And so this is another small step. Trees are a small step, making sure that, for example, we shut all the air conditioning off at certain times in the summer for a couple of hours. Buildings like ours, every couple of hours adds up to lots of emissions, etc. So we got a nice letter that said we get about $1,500 refund because that equals a certain number of points. These are all small steps. So if everybody makes the small steps, whether they drive electric, whether they walk one day a week versus drive that day, these are all steps we're trying to encourage, not only in our community, but obviously also as a municipality who has buildings, etc., etc. So, you know, we do what we preach. So that is mine. We are moving out of Black History Month into Women's History Month beginning March 1st. Yay. So these months, some people think they're silly. I happen to like them because I think it just creates a focus on different issues in different communities. And they're, you know, they're sort of a North Star for education. You know, you focus on different issues depending on what month of the year it is. And so not quite as exciting as Ice Cream Day or Donut Day, but nevertheless, still important. And so we're going to Women's Month. There will be, and I think there was a request in my mayor's message that if you are running events for Women's History Month in the village or surrounding areas, to please let Jamie Hoffman know so that we can put that into our weekly web blast. So that's it for the announcements. And as always for this, did you have an announcement? Village Manager.
Mayor, we actually have a very brief special.
Oh,
meeting.
I'm sorry, special meeting.
can
Yes,
just do
thank
that.
you, sir.
Let me take the roll, please. Trustee Kazada,
Present.
Trustee White,
Look,
Trustee Fritchie,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Lopez, Mayor Levin.
present.
Okay, there's one item on tonight's agenda.
That's you.
Resolution A, authorizing the village manager to sign an agreement with, Premier Fire Apparatus for 2026 E1 Custom Typhoon Aluminum Rescue Truck. Resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, village manager is authorized to sign a purchase agreement with Premier Fire Apparatus, 68 Leggs Mills Road, Lake Katrine, New York, 12499, 12449 for one 2026 E1 Custom Typhoon Aluminum Rescue Truck for $950,000 pursuant to the apparatus proposal dated February 22, 2024, and attached specifications. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, are you on?
Second.
Okay, you got her second. Just a comment, this was approved in the 2024 budget that we did. There is now what looks like to me a little bit more than a 2-year wait on these trucks, which is why we approved them. We tried to really look at the number of trucks that we have, but this will take 2 years. It used to be a few months when we approved, now it takes 2 years. So approval now actually means you're signing up and you're locking in the rate, which will you are getting picked up on the mic. So either turn them off and that happens throughout the room. That's one of the reasons that people wonder why we're doing what we're doing. And frankly, right now, under $1 million is, I hate to say, a bargain, because, why would I ever say that about $1 million? But in the world of the costs right now, we wanted to lock it in because it's going up 15% from what we understand if we don't. So just wanted to let the public know and have a recorded of the reasoning behind this. And it was approved already in our budget.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I have a motion to adjourn to work session.
So moved.
Second.
All
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Okay, now, village manager. You're on.
Good evening, everyone. First on our agenda tonight, we have our partners from Project Mover. Nelson Nygaard is the consulting firm working on this project. As you all know, this is a project that is designed to make Ossining a test community for micromobility and e-bikes and provide them to people who may not be able to either afford them or access them otherwise. So with that, I'd like it to turn it over to Drew Van Hengel and her colleagues.
I think we prefer to present here. Yes,
I think you just have to, for whatever reason today, you got to speak right into the mic.
Great, we just needed to turn it on. Thank you very much, Village Manager DeTore. I'm Drew Van Hengel with Nelson Nygaard, and I'm going to be tag teaming our update tonight with my colleague.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mitch LaRosa, Chief Development Officer with Shared Mobility.
Great. So the purpose of our being before you today is to provide a general overview of the program for those of you who haven't been keeping up with it over time, and also to announce some work that we're doing here to advance the selection of a bike share vendor. So we're very excited about a few days we're spending here starting earlier today, actually. We have on the next slide, please, Jamie, we have a 5-part agenda, but we think we're going to be well within the bounds of reasonableness for timing. So if we could go to the next section, please, just providing an overview for you and for the public about the program. Project Mover includes 6 program elements. The project was funded through a NYSERDA grant, about a $7 million grant to develop many elements and replicate them with partner villages, which I'll get to on the next slide. The program itself, Project Mover, includes a public e-bike share program, which is where people, Mitch will talk more about this, but basically the e-bike share program is a program where people check bikes in and out of docking stations to move point to point within the village and then within the villages as expansion happens. The e-bike ownership pathway is a pathway to ownership for people who might be high volume users or for whom bike share docking stations don't help them get from point to point. That's a program that will roll out later on in our delivery. The e-bike lending library is much like a library, lots of different types of things to check out. So a variety of bicycle types housed in a specific location where donations and repairs and checkouts and returns might happen over time. These 2 second and third elements are in development right now. We're really going to be focusing tonight about the public e-bike share program, which is much closer to implementation. The fourth element of the prize was a neighborhood greenway network, a bike boulevard network to support what we heard in our initial engagement, which is that there are places where bicycle riding might not be that pleasant within the village. Let's really emphasize the streets where bicycling can be more pleasant with lower traffic volumes and lower speeds, and implement a network over time with your rehabilitation program. The fifth element is educational programming, introducing e-bikes as a viable transportation choice, specifically focusing on people who might have limited transportation options presently. The electric micromobility incubator, or the EMI, is how we take these 5 programs I just talked about, grow them not only in the village, but expand them to the partners who signed up to be a part of the project when we did apply for the grant together, and set up a replication playbook for other villages and jurisdictions to come on board over time throughout the village of Westchester based upon our learnings together. 2 work streams that support all 6 core program elements include community engagement and outreach, and monitoring, measurement, and evaluation. The program area is on the next slide. Just want to emphasize that this program and your partnership with the City Fi and SMI and Nelson Nygaard and the other villages came out of the mobility and parking management study, which was completed a couple of years ago, in which we heard from community members, we need more options to get to the places and people that we want to visit and patronize within the village. Other local plans that this bike share program and the other elements are consistent with include the MOGO, the bike plan, the Village of Croton on Hudson's bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and the work that's underway between Dobbs Ferry and Terrytown to determine whether there might be more viable ways to support bicycling between those villages with the Complete Streets project, which is underway through the kind of underway with a design exercise that's been funded by the New York State DOT. So again, the project area for Project Mover complements planning efforts that have been underway and includes the Village of Ossining as the innovator and the preliminary partner in getting the project going and on the ground. And then shortly, and we've been working with the EMIs, which are the Electric Micromobility Incubator Villages, which include Croton on Hudson, the town of Ossining, Terrytown, and Dobbs Ferry. And we've been working with stakeholders from those communities for the last year or so to help them prepare to learn from Ossining as we get on the ground with the bike share. On the next slide, just re-emphasizing that this program includes measurement and evaluation, but the ultimate test for Project Mover is that the number of rides taken, the number of people that sign up for the lease to own and reduce fare programs, and adoption and sustained use of e-bikes as great transportation choices for people living, working, and visiting the village. We are specifically focused on improving the options for low-income residents, people who might be spending too much of their overall budget on their transportation using the single occupant vehicle, or maybe spending too much time on their daily budget on transit because it's not as reliable and available as e-bike share might be. So on the next slide is just an overview of the whole Project Mover timeline. We are at the point where we're moving towards a launch of the bike share program element, that point-to-point dock-based system that Mitch will talk more about. We're doing some reconnaissance during these couple of days to see where the stations might be. We need to pass a hurdle with the state in order to get go from the planning and preliminary design that we're doing to the actual procurement of the bicycles and getting the systems on the ground. And we're going to cross over that that boundary in very short order, so that we can launch in the end of Q2 24 the bike share system, preliminary pilot system in the village, and learn from that, replicate the launching with the other communities that are part of the program, and start to learn from your operations here how we might expand the program further for not only the bike share element, but the bike library and the lease to own pathway. So it's a rolling kind of pilot, learn, grow for each of the 3 program streams of the bike share, bike library, and lease to own. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mitch, who's been a really valued, trusted partner for us over about the last year.
Thank you, Drew. Can everyone hear me on the microphone? All right. Well, as I said, my name is Mitch with Shared Mobility. Really appreciate the time to speak with you all, and glad we could get a little introduction here. I know I've met some of you in our visit last year and our visit so far this week, but Just to give you a little background, we're a Buffalo-based nonprofit that does work nationwide. Our mission is to advance mobility as a human right. So all the work we do is really centered around that core focus, that core mission, and it's been guiding us since our founding in 2009. Where we really fit in very well with this project is that we have over 10 years of experience working with NYSERDA on critical mobility projects across different modes and different communities. Specifically, we are also a partner on one of the other Clean Transportation Prize projects that's focused in Buffalo. So a lot of the same process and, sort of workarounds with NYSERDA that we have to do for this project that require the approvals and the oversight from their end, we're familiar with in our other work. And we really want to bring that here. We also support and actually operate 2 different bike share systems already in New York State, Ready Bike Share in Western New York, so that's Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and CDPHB Cycle in the capital region, so Albany, Schenectady, Troy, etc. That's in addition to work on e-bike libraries and other different access programs that we really think work well here. So we're really appreciative to be a part of the team, meet you all, and talk more about this. On the next slide, I can actually introduce some more of my team members here. So you know me, but we've got Nate Schultz, our operations director from Western New York, Steve Bratspitz, our capital region operations director, and Tyler Maydell, our program manager for e-bike programs. So this is the team you'll see around this week from our end, in addition to folks from Drew's team at Nelson Nygaard and a few of our other partners. But we're very excited to be here. Steve and I were here last year and got these guys all dressed up for it. So I had to give them a shout out. Next slide, Jamie, please. So like I said, our involvement in Project Mover dates back to about March last year. And we came down here in April to kind of get a meeting with all of you and begin to get our bearings in the project. At the same time, this is when NYSERDA began its approval process to begin to modify the contract and begin to shift around some of the partners in that. A process that took about 6 to 7 months, all told, between the initial review, more approvals, and the work with them to do that. But it's a lot of hurdles we crossed, and we're really, happy to be through that and onto the program development portions of these really critical projects that Drew has already mentioned. So on the next couple slides, I can just give you guys an overview on sort of what these programs are as a refresher. So as a reminder, bike share is this point-to-point dock-based type system. Short-term use is really the objective here. This is you taking the bike from the office to lunch to come back down to the grocery store and back, or even just for a recreational ride. And, we want to make sure that the program addresses all the use cases we can. But the real ethos for us is that these programs are highly modular, and they can be specifically designed to each community they work in. So the work that Steve does in Albany and the towns he works in is not the exact same way we approach things in Buffalo or Niagara Falls with Nate's team. And that's going to be different than how we approach work with you all in Ossining and the surrounding river towns. So that's everything from hardware to station placement to engagement with community. It all needs to be tailored for it really to work. But the bones are there, and this is really where a lot of our experience as an organization lies. On the next slide, I can touch on the ownership pathway, which is a program that we are in development on, and, kind of taking a fresh look at this program. Given the time it's taken as we've gone through these development timelines and processes, a lot of new work and programs have emerged nationwide in this field. And given that we're at this point where we are still setting the groundwork for a lot of these programs, it's been our team's approach to look to those other programs nationwide, specifically the ones in Tampa, Columbus, Worcester, and see what can be done to replicate the successful best practices of those programs into an Ossining specific ownership pathway. But again, where bike share addresses the short-term use case, the ownership pathway is on the other end of that spectrum. This is long-term personal ownership of e-bikes. It's really the byproduct of building that all-inclusive bike culture that we want to do with the programs here. And the last slide of these overviews is the e-bike library slide. This is work we've actually been doing in a lot of our programs. We've got about 6 or 8 programs in a few different states across the country. The picture you see on the screen here is from the Eastside Bike Club in Buffalo. But really an e-bike library is just like a library for books. We envision this as some place where folks can check out different types of e-bikes or different types of mobility devices for some period of time. And it's really something that can help fill in the specific use cases that the generalized bike share or the ownership pathway don't fill. And so we're working with the community groups that Drew and her team have brought into the fold, sourcing our knowledge from these programs we work with in Buffalo and Niagara Falls, Los Angeles, Boston, to figure out what can we do to make a very unique Ossining specific bike library that fits that need. And I've addressed these programs in the order that we're looking to develop them, where bike share is going to serve a large majority of those needs. Ownership pathway going to, again, fulfill the personal side of things. And the e-bike library can be really tailored to fit what needs we don't have from that. And it's that sort of iterative approach we want to bring to the work we're doing with you all here. On the next slide, it's kind of just an overview, but basically Steve, Nate, these are your bike share guys. Tyler, he's going to be helping with library, a lot of the other e-bike stuff, you know, in bringing that good best practice research in. You'll see my name and face on a lot of these calls coordinating all this. So just as a refresher there. But I think in the next section, so Jamie, you got a slide and then another one is an update for you all on where we stand specifically with the bike share pilot deployment. And we've made bike share the priority program here, in part because it serves the most needs, in part because it fits our team's experience at the highest level. And we also understand the pressing need to get these programs going. We have heard constantly and consistently through our conversations and dialogue with you all that the need for these programs is high and the time is now to get these things moving. The trick with bike share procurement is that it takes time, but the time to launch has to open in a certain window. We can't launch the bike share on Christmas, for instance. You have to launch it in nice weather. And so we're trying to work around the need to get this on the ground in 2024, keep our processes moving forward. We've made a lot of good progress with the support of Drew and her team and the other partners in this project to get to where we are. Somewhere in this initial design process and the bike share selection going on concurrently, which is why we're down here this week doing all the work we're doing. So on the next slide, I can take you all through a little bit of what our process is with this. And for everyone's reference, we as a nonprofit are the operator of bike shares. We've also supported different bike share program developments that other folks operate, expansions of existing programs, kind of fitting all those needs in here. But for us in this project is making sure that the programs we deliver are suited to Ossining, meet the needs of NYSERDA, and have a lot of long-term success. To do that, we need a partner that can give us the right hardware, the right software, the right technology, and the right experience in operating to make sure that we make a system here that works. So our vendor evaluation sort of takes like a kind of look under the hood approach with vendors. We want to see what they offer, what their experience is, basically give a sniff test. Are the vendors that we're going to be engaging with here and working now? Will they be here in the long term? And does their product have the right fit? So on the next slide, it's just an overview of sort of our broad approach and very specific results of this RFEI process. So we issued a request for expressions of interest to bike share vendors in December of last year. And keep in mind, you know, the bike share space is not very large. This is 10 to 15 groups overall in the country doing this work. So we were able to really specifically hone in and target who we were engaging with this opportunity. We received 7 responses back at the end of January, and we're really pleased with that. Our vetting of this showed that 3 of these vendors have strong alignment and they would be worthy of more investigation, more inquiry, and we really want to be able to hone in on that. The other 4 didn't align, and we're glad we were able to do sort of this screening process to make sure that we weren't bringing vendors here that wouldn't fit this. 2 of those companies were just charging station companies, didn't offer an e-bike. The other 2 were startup companies. Their bikes had not seen field experience anywhere else, and they really weren't fit for this market. But the 3 vendors we have offer us a very solid range of choices that we think will lead to the best decision possible for the bike share program here. All these companies meet the requirements I had in the last slide. And really at this point, it's finding out what's the best fit on financials, alignment, and the bike itself for the conditions we have here with topography from the river up to the center of the village here. So what that's yielded is a sort of a second round process that's focused on interviews with those vendors, their executive teams and their operations teams, getting a very thorough questionnaire that Drew, myself, and all of our other partners put together. And that leads us up to Friday this week, where we have e-bikes in town, and we'd like to have you all come down if you're available to help give us feedback and see what you feel and think, and give us a sense of how you would like us to continue to move forward with this as we consider a lot of factors, but the local factor is one of the most important ones, and we really want to make sure that's prioritized here. On the next slide, we have this, and just a recap of what we're doing this week. So today we met with Trustee Fritchie and the fire department, Ossining PD, and the village engineer, Paul, to kind of get a sense of things, where everything stands, and check in with everyone. Tomorrow we'll be doing CBO meetings with IFCA, Open Door, and NeighborsLink, alongside some station sighting that Steve, Nate, and Tyler will be out doing. We'll be on bikes tomorrow, so if you see us riding around with a measuring tape, looking at things like we're scoping it out, that's because we're scoping out potential bike share stations, and we're really excited to be here doing that. It's probably one of my favorite parts to work, honestly. Get on a bike and, you know, have a good day out to look at this. So this leads us up to the next slide, which kind of covers what we'll be doing with the actual bike share siting and selection process. We're looking at trying to get the top 15 locations in the village right now. For a phase 1 pilot, that's about the number of locations you would need, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but that's sort of the number we're honing in on, we think is going to be workable for this year to make sure that we cover the village and we get an understanding of what bike share will look like and be used in the village. And that's going to influence how we either augment the current system, adapt the phase 2 deployment, and just make sure that where the stations are, how we set the system up, everything works right. But the foundation needs to be laid in a way that gives people easy access and intuitive access to the system. So really the 4 major points we're looking at is, is this location proximate to a place people want to be, a point of interest? Is there space available to put a station down and deploy that? Can you get to and from it easy? Is it visible? Is this somewhere you'd want to start a bike trip? And is it a safe place to bike once you start and end that trip? So we have a list of locations. I think this is a map from some of the earlier analyses, but we're focused a lot on the village core, the area around the Metro North Station, Engle Park, and making sure that all of the sort of existing connections within the village lead to that so that we enhance the connectivity. We're building into the village's existing grid and the way everyone gets around. So on the last slide, I think we just have a bit of an overview of what Friday may look like. And I'm sorry that I know that we had to pick a time in a day that wouldn't work necessarily for everyone. And I do feel, bad that unfortunately we can't have everyone there. But if anyone wants to talk about this more with me, please come find me afterwards or come reach out, because I'd love to make sure that you all feel like you're included in this. But for those who are able to attend on Friday, from 1 to 4, we're going to have the 3 e-bikes from our potential vendors down there at Here Coffee. We really would love for you all to come down, have a discussion with us about what this means and what each vendor offers for the program. And, if you feel up to it, take a ride and get on the bike and give us that feedback so that we know that, we had folks from the village, from our partners, from the other EMIs come and give us that direct feedback, because otherwise this decision stays as an abstract. And we really want to make sure this is a grounded level decision that works here for Ossining. So we're really excited to do this. I would say in the work that I've done with major bike shares across the country, this is a pretty rare opportunity to get this many folks here and get all of that together. So we're really happy to provide that. And we hope that it can be a really good time to engage with you all and talk a little bit more about this. I think that's the end of the presentation. If not, more questions? Yeah. Yes, there's the other step, but we can just get the questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Always nice to see you, Drew. And honestly, if you were the only person running this entire project, I feel much better than I do at this moment, but we'll discuss that shortly. I think you're great. I just think that we keep saying vendors every time we have conversations about this project. It's a different vendor, different ideas, nothing at all to do with where we started and not moving forward to where we were. I wish it was only you, because I've watched you in action and you are amazing. So I'm glad you're still in the project. I am not so happy that every other vendor is no longer the vendor. It's been like a revolving door. So that, you don't have to reply. That's a public statement for the record. So, but specific to the presentation made today, I do have some questions, but I'm going to start to my right with my colleagues.
Is the event on Friday open to the public, or is it?
We'd like to keep it, close to core partners in the village. The
Okay.
confidentiality concerns with the vendors that have come forward for this is something we just want to make sure we keep, in
Okay.
mind. So we don't want to open it to the public, but we do invite all of you to come and attend, if that's possible.
Will so it said here, coffee and beer. Are you going to rent the place out for okay, no, I'm just wondering if people are going to be seeing
be
this
there.
and wondering,
Sure, sure.
oh,
sure.
what's
If I-
going on? Can I try a bike? That's all.
Thank you, Trustee
Yeah.
White. The select invitations are issued to the have been issued to the administrators and representatives from Terrytown, all the villages that are in the EMI, including the town of Ossining, Croton, Terrytown, and Dobbs Ferry, and yourselves. The other invited participants are the community-based partners, representatives from IFCA, Open Door, Neighbors Link, and we don't think that Hudson Link will be there, but we have separate conversations with them. We held this as an invitation only, basically because of the issues that Mitch described, but also that all of you have been informing what this program should look like and what the bikes need to do for the project, and it's the time for you all to get on the bikes and say like, yeah, these ones really feel, this one or others feel like it would be suitable for this topography in the community.
Well, they need to be able to go uphill well. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so powerful.
I
bike.
do. I have one. I've ridden it.
Yeah.
It goes up. Is anybody available? Are you?
I
Nobody,
maybe,
I think on the board is.
I
right?
might be. I
As
might
we all
be,
work.
I might be.
You might be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Depends on how I feel.
A
Comments?
dozen people confirmed or so from
Okay.
across the
Yeah, the
community.
partners and the staff. Are you, have questions?
Oh, that's it. Mhm.
Do you have questions? Or comments? Okay. Bob, I'm glad to hear you met with these guys tonight.
Yeah, we met,
Earlier today.
yeah,
That's
we met
great.
earlier today with the
Great.
chiefs. And very good, open discussion and good to see you. I hope you ate dinner. I don't know where you went for dinner, but I gave you a good place to go, but no, very, looking forward to the progress here.
Thank you, Trustee Fritchie. We appreciate the time with you and the chiefs today.
No problem.
Sir?
Thank you. I'm gonna sort of concentrate a little bit more on the presentation, that overall discussion that I think the mayor said already, put an address of what this whole project has been itself. So in one of your slides, and just maybe just for me to a little bit more point of clarification, where you have the map of the different municipalities. Jamie, if you don't mind pulling that up.
Already doing it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. That, no, that one right there.
There we go.
So, and now when looking to this, and obviously we are sort of like what you said was the model that you're trying to put together for the communities. So just help me understand a little bit on the legend. You have an EV charging station. Can you be a little bit more specific? What does that mean?
Green dots.
Yeah, I think this is a dated map. I don't have a response for the EV charging station. There are no EV charging stations as a part of this project.
Okay, so that was my, sort of here, you have a map that has information that to me is not related sort of to the project in a way. So it's a little bit more misleading in what this is about, sure.
Trustee Caseta, I appreciate that. And now I'm reflecting on the map as I can see it closer over here. The title is EMI Community Investments, E-Mobility Integration. So the idea is, where does this E-Mobility project integrate with other electric projects throughout the villages that are?
But that's not as a part of, it's not very specific unless you know that, sure. So for me, it's a little bit misleading in what this means, sure. So I'll leave
Okay,
that
good
one alone.
information that it's not part of this particular
course.
project, but part of other projects.
Yeah, and I think it would be more like maybe somewhere along the lines we'll say that. So the other one is, besides the timeline, which hopefully will happen, I'll be watching on 25 and see what the progress is. But let me ask you a little bit more on the technical end, when you talked about more or less you have now 3 vendors.
Yes.
Sure.
Mm.
Hopefully one of them will be picked up. What is your timeline to select that particular vendor?
We'd like to have a final decision, and thank you for the question, Trustee, because we'd like to have a decision made by early March. We have done the interviews with the vendors, we've done the background vetting throughout this month, and the demo is really probably one of this last quarter step of the process. We're on the home stretch of that. The idea is that we need to have that selection made as soon as possible, because we need to make sure that that vendor can then deliver product by the end of Q2 goal that we've set for deployment here. And as I mentioned earlier, we know that the deployment timelines for the bike share programs, or really any of these bike programs, can be specific, and we want to launch them specifically in the bike months when this project will have the most attention and the most immediate availability for folks based on that. And we also take the delays that have happened in this very seriously. And a lot of that predates Shared Mobility's involvement, but we joined the project knowing that those delays existed, knowing that there would likely be nice sort of process to get through that, and understanding that that was going to inevitably present challenges for our team to come in and begin to write the programmatic ship here for that. So we take the delays and the idea that there has been promises made to this board, promises made to the community before, very seriously, because it impacts the work we are now currently engaged on here. So we hope to have that vendor decision done and finalized early next month, so that we can begin the contracting process simultaneous to the sort of financial approval process for that stage of the project, and then hope to have bikes delivered within about the 8 to 12 week time frame after that.
Okay.
Given that everything is set and that no further action is needed from NYSERDA, which we have certainly a lot of confidence that we'll work through that, but you all work with state government sometimes. Sometimes the state government has its ways of doing things, and we will, take that as it comes, and we've been in contact with our representatives, so.
Okay, thank you. And you don't have to go in too much into specifics, but I'm assuming out of the three vendors, one of them, or at least hopefully all three of them have done work in Westchester area.
I don't believe any of them have systems deployed in Westchester. I know that there was one prior deployment of a
Or New-
system here, but
What about New York City or anything around? So New York City.
yeah, and New York
Okay.
State. They all three have had bikes active and available within New York State.
Okay. All right, thank you. Now, and I know this is not part of this, and I will not hold you to the number, but
Mm.
for the share portion of it, let's say I wanted, I want to take one of those bikes. What is the average cost? Or how would that work for the public to take one of those bikes out?
So I don't want to give you
You don't have
exact
to give
number.
me an
Okay.
exact amount.
I can explain some logic behind how we would set that. So we treat bike share like public transit and what they call the fare box recovery, where you don't need to get a profit from the folks riding the bus. You need to get some portion back that covers a minimum of the cost on top of everything else. The model we've used in Buffalo and the capital region is to find sponsors that can augment the sort of cost inputs for the program. They can provide some of that funding that bridges what we need. And then we figure out, okay, so of the balance remaining that we need to keep the lights on, keep program staff on, keep things running, what do we need to set the price at then to cover that, but also understanding that we don't want to set the price so high that it is pricing people out of using the bikes. And so then it becomes a more specific question of what is the affordability for each market we work in, and also how do we create plans and different options that serve different segments of the population. I mean, having an equity focused plan for folks who are of lower income and need an easier path to access that versus using folks who come to town and they're visitors and maybe have more expendable money as a way to help offset those costs across the program. But the bottom line for us is that we want to only charge what we need to charge. And that's from the nonprofit side of our work that we believe in. It's then something that we have had a lot of sustainability with in these two systems. And Nate's system's been running for 9 years and Steve's been running for 8 on these models. And having that sponsorship relationship and the community relationship is something we like to blend together in the program. So I know that that's more inputs and process than cost number, but
So that brought out two more questions.
Mm.
So, and I'm gonna be, and if you can be very specific. So let's talk about Buffalo, because you say you guys done. So if I'm in Buffalo, how
Mhm.
much would it cost me to rent a bike?
so it is $3 to start for the 2-day pass and 10 cents a minute to ride after that. One of the more affordable options on bike share.
So now you also said, part of this, part of how is that being supported is by sponsors.
Yes.
Who qualifies to sponsor and how we get sponsors and who gets the sponsors?
So we have a title sponsor for both of these systems. In Buffalo, it's Independent Health, and in the capital region, it is CDPHP. These are both health insurance providers. They see the programs as an extension of their public health mission, and they see the fact that we have bikes available in these communities as a way to get people healthier. So it appeals to them and their their company stance on that. And so we've worked in these markets with the folks in the business community there to identify that there may be potential sponsorship avenues for that, and then have given them the pitch of like why this would be important for the community and why it would elevate the brand. And so I can't speak to the Albany side as much, but I can speak to the Buffalo side where we do a lot more of the relationship with Independent Health, and the presentations at the end of each year are, hey, here's how many impressions you got as a company from based on having your name and logo on every single bike. Here's the impacts that have been spurred on by the program. And it's really important that we maintain those relationships long term. But I think that that's also in the case of Ossining and the Westchester River Towns. This is where we look to Drew and her team and the networks that are built around that to begin thinking about what those options for a potential sponsorship partner could be. Anything you'd like to add, Drew?
Yeah. I think what we have the benefit here now is we have the NYSERDA prize. So we have some time to gather the impressions of potential sponsors and to decide collectively for the whole program how we want this program to be affiliated with whom. So we'll have time to get the interest of potential sponsors. We'll have time to have conversations with those potential sponsors about the long-term needs for the program to be sustainable. And many other programs that have gotten the sustainability that Mitch is talking about didn't have this upfront prize to carry us forward for a bit before we decide who our title and other sponsors will be.
So, and then this one, I'll end with this question. So you want to launch this 24. So, but you also talk about finding the sponsors. At some point of time, you said when, because now the approval for NYSERDA more or less is going to be sometime next year, correct?
Well, I can jump in.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things there. So
That's for the ownership.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's for the ownership.
Well,
For
no,
the
well, so-
approval is going to be back in 25. So I'm not, to me, so when is the sponsors portion comes in on
Sure.
on your time schedule?
Yeah, I just want to clarify about the NYSERDA approvals too. So NYSERDA in its contracts basically gates off the resources for each of these programs based on like the statement of work we were agreed to when we got the project awarded. So we seek their approval when we go from the pilot and the first phase deployment in Ossining, that they release the amount of funds that we would say that we would need to do that. They release the remaining funds for each of those programs when we expand to the EMIs. So those are the 6 gates you see on the timeline that was in that. In terms of the sponsorship and that sort of like, when do we need that? As Drew mentioned, the unique opportunity here is that NYSERDA's funding provides the financial sustainability for this program for the first 3 years, which is the really critical time for a lot of these programs to get their feet under them, get connected, and really make themselves useful as a program to the community and demonstrate that, that value. So we want to start the process of finding a sponsor as soon as possible. We also know that the time it takes for the program to mature, develop, and grow also increases our ability to find and secure that sponsor, because we need to provide value to that sponsor, that they're sponsoring something that is meaningful and that is visible and that also aligns with their values as well. So the process and the conversations about that have already started. It's been a very big part of our discussion between Drew and I about what vendors specifically can actually have the ability to have sponsorship and branding on them should we want to go in that direction. It was one of the many things we considered in the evaluation matrix so that we weren't buying bikes that didn't have an end game in that direction. So we've started the conversations in earnest already to make sure that's available. And I think that the intention then, once we get the program launched, is to continue to build those relationships and gauge interest about how do we go about it. But the 3-year window that the operations funds from NYSERDA provides are really critical and frankly a game changer for trying to launch a system in this way.
So to conclude, the sponsors will be necessary if we all want the program to go for more than 3 years. And so that's why we want to get some traction, see it, prove concept, prove it works. And as Mitch was saying, increase the value to the sponsor downstream should we all decide that it's not just a 3-year program. And I think you might have also been alluding to the cost of how to qualify for perhaps so low income memberships, because I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to clarify that we're working with our project partners to try to figure out where to set the threshold for the low income memberships which will be a lower cost than the generalized membership and the tourist membership, for example, that Mitch described. And we don't need sponsors for that either, because this is built into our planning for the system to provide accessible transportation choices for people who are living with limited incomes. So I just wanted to clarify that that's not only what Mitch described, but that third level of whether we need sponsorship to provide options, and we do not.
I understand, Anna. Thank you. And I think for me, the concern will be obviously around 2025, at some point of time, the board or this board will have to make a decision if they want to move forward, because by the time you guys start getting sponsors, it seems like it could be not a 6-month period, maybe a little bit longer than that, hopefully less than that. So, but I'll leave that for them to decide in 2025 if they want to move forward 2026. So, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Why am I on the lights not on?
Yeah.
Hello. Hi. Welcome. And this is really one of the first times that I'm really engaging in person with folks from the team. I'm Omar Lopez. Very happy to have you here in Ossining. So I want to express the conflicting feelings that I have, which I think are complementary to what the mayor said, but different. So on the one hand, I'm very excited by this project. I'm a huge bike lover. It's something that I am glad we're able to have more of in our village. To me, this is great. And so the objectives are something that I'm fully behind. Where I have more concerning feelings are in 2 places. One is in what this is exactly. So there are a few layers to it, the bike share, the affordability, the path to affordability, the one that I understand the least, the bike library, but you know, there are some things going on. So there's a bunch of things going on. The part of it that is most concerning to me is that I feel like I don't know. There's a bunch of this that I'm not quite clear about. I don't know what I don't know. The trustee here was kind of mentioning this, like, you know, we'll see what happens in 3 years, and we'll kind of, there's a bunch of things that when I know our community, right, I bristle at the idea that a solution is coming to us as opposed to happening with us or for us, right? So it's not that we had a group of community members saying, hey, we really want bicycles for these reasons. We want to get from this part of town to this one. We want to do this. It's this opportunity that has come about, so we're going to make the most of it. But as a result, there are a few aspects of our community that may be similar to places like Buffalo or maybe different. So we have a large number of folks that are undocumented. A number of them are unbanked. And so if, for example, having a credit card is important to being able to take out a bicycle, then they don't have access to the service. If, for example, helmets, which are something that are required for Fridays, or at least being offered for Friday's demo. Waivers and helmets will be available. What about for the community members that are ultimately using this service? They will have to sign waivers, I guess, as part of the, you know, that's how that works. So you're legally covered. But what about safety, right? It's something that we don't have a ton of people that are cycling. And so this will be a marked increase in this way of moving around the village that I would want safety to be a real part of it. So as we're moving forward with this, which my understanding is less about like, hey, do y'all want to do it? And more like, hey, we're doing this. And like, what is, let us know, give us feedback along the way. So I'm happy to give you that feedback. The main thing is, if we could have clarity over here's what we're doing, when we're doing it, how we're doing it, so that if, for example, we're doing the 15 spots, have clarity why those 15 spots. Is it because those are the ones that are most accessible, where there are the most people, where, you know, whatever it is, that kind of thing, so that folks have an understanding of why we're doing what we're doing, and then taking our particular communities into account. I'm very happy to hear that we have representation from places like Neighbors Link and Open Door and so forth. They will represent a lot of aspects of our community. We have others as well. I'm sure that we'll have young people that are using these bicycles. We have a lot of them running around, and I don't know if they're represented necessarily as part of the stakeholder. So a member of the school community, of the school board, or of the Department of Education or something like that might be helpful. Y'all are the professionals at this, and so I'll leave you to being able to figure out the details. But however it is that I can be helpful, I want to make sure that you're setting me specifically, I can only speak for myself, me up for success, to be able to give you the information that you need. And I'm hopeful that this helps to solve some of the mobility challenges that we have throughout the village. But I also wanted you to hear a little bit of the reaction that I'm coming from. Yeah.
May I respond?
So, oh, okay.
Yeah, I appreciate your concerns, and I'm thrilled that you're engaged now. This has been a 3-year process. And as I started, we spoke with your colleagues here around that time when the mobility and parking management study about the opportunity to ask the question, could bike share be a solution for the village of Ossining? We worked with, as we talked about before, when the answer to that question was yes, we spent 2 years working with community partners and your colleagues here to have just these conversations. Who needs to be supported? How should the system be designed? How do you, and addressing and having conversations just about these things that concern you so strongly, people who are undocumented, people who are unbanked, people who don't have access to helmets. We have we have an education program to address the safety, the helmet use. We have funding for helmets. We have funding for locks. They're all part of the grant application, which we which we developed collaboratively over the last 2 years in 2 phases of previous NYSERDA funding. So we're thrilled that you're able to contribute to the program at this point in time, and we're eager to open up all the analyses and conversations that we've had to get to this point to let you respond to what we have heard that was asked of us to bring forward.
Thank you.
Mm.
Can I piggyback on something?
I want to also be very cognizant of the time.
That's fine. I'll be quick. So, and I want to piggyback on something that Omar mentioned I thought you were going to say this. Thanks. And you don't have to answer this. I really don't. So we also talked about pedestrian safety, that we are very concerned, traffic safety. For me, the biggest challenge that whatever this project will become is we don't have dedicated bike lanes in our streets. And a lot of them, I'm sure if you drive tomorrow or Friday as well, they're very narrow. So, and we have a problem with parking. When we have that in a lot of the areas that I think you're trying to locate this, is going to be a biggest challenge, not just for the person who's riding the bike, but for the persons who are actually driving on those streets. So I'm not sure how's that problem going to be solved, because our streets cannot go wider. It can always go narrow. So I'll leave it like that. So that's one of my major concerns.
Okay, so, for me, I've actually been very involved in the project. And, what was presented tonight is fine. It is about 6 degrees over from the conversations that have been had for 2 to 3 to whatever years. Because as the deputy mayor said, in a different way, let me say it in my own words, nobody in the village came up to anybody and said, we have a bike problem. We have a mobility via bike problem. It was presented to us as an incubator to try out a solution for a larger concept of mobility, e-mobility, right? So there's many e-mobility solutions. And that there is a lot of funding where we would be an incubator. It is different to be an incubator, which is simply a vessel for the Hudson Valley, for the surrounding communities, than it is to say there's a problem and we're going to solve it. So I want to be very clear, because these meetings are recorded. And in a year, when people tell me that's not really what happened, I'm going to sit there and go, yeah, listen to the meeting. So you should be aware that I'm not just talking to you, I'm actually talking to the public when I do this, okay? So we've taken 6 degrees, not 106 degrees, a few degrees from where we started and what we agreed to as a board. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Why? Because I'm not actually clear what we're doing. The biggest issue that came up in public engagement was not about the bike, except when the media started talking about bikes blowing up in the city and legislation, all that. We didn't predict that. That fell upon us. I am 100% confident that all that will be resolved. It's like everything else. Start something new, things happen, the battery, whatever. People will solve it. Bikes have been in the cities, in the big cities in this country. They've been in Europe. They've been all over. We're not the first ones to be doing this. So I'm not worried about that. No issue. For me, I know it'll be resolved. A bike share, not what we signed up for. That was a piece of a much larger story from my perspective, and I have been involved with this a lot. So, I'm sort of okay that that's where you guys came out, and that's like the most doable thing, first step out. All right, like, what do I know? I thought it was about ownership, that people have it, whatever. But what I heard in the engagement had nothing to do with the bikes. What it had to do with is actually the roads, that we are going to get a real study about the avenues. Why? Because this is not an Ossining project. All we are is an incubator. We're our startup location. Could have chosen anybody for it. Ossining doesn't get money. You all do. We don't get that. We get a lot of staff putting a lot of hours into it that we're paying for, but we ourselves don't get a check from anybody for doing this. Some of your partners do, and that's been made public, and that is part of their involvement. Hopefully we'll create some jobs for some of these partners. That's a great thing. That wasn't mentioned, but that's actually part of it. At least it was in the beginning. The idea here has been presented from day one, and I think it's a good mission, is not that this is for Ossining. that it is going to be worked in Austin, because if you can make it work on our hills and our narrow streets and our 1800 incorporated village and our waterfront, then you could take it to Tarrytown and Croton and Rhinebeck and Poughkeepsie and every other place. Frankly, if it works in cities, congratulations, but I didn't need you guys to tell me that, because if you travel in this world, you know that cities like Buffalo and all these other places have had bikes for quite a while. And so has New York City when you go in. I mean, it took them a number of years. There were hurdles. Okay, so you're taking something that works in cities. So that's why there's nothing in Westchester, because they haven't really found a successful model. We're supposed to be that experiment to figure out how you get these two villages and towns with 45-degree hills and gravel everywhere and sidewalks and no sidewalks and all the other stuff that goes on. So my hope was that the first solution isn't about the bike, that the first solution would be about the avenues and how you build avenues so that a grandparent can visit a grandchild riding a bike without having to buy a car at, $2,000 a month and then find parking for that car, that she can go visit her grandchild or go to work at Phelps or go shopping or go to the commute area when commuters have it 9 months out of the year, 7 months. Those were the conversations. I would be really happy if those continue to be the conversations, not about bikes. Because we could have just gone to the people that did the city bike in the city and told that vendor, Ossining would like to have some bikes. Can you come here and do it? We don't need a multi-million-dollar, multi-year environment from NYSERDA, in my opinion, for Ossining to do that. We're just the incubator. If we're the wrong incubator, somebody should tell us that. If we're the right incubator, I'd like to understand the metrics, because nowhere here is a metrics. Like, I don't even know in Buffalo what says success. 10 people an hour using it, 1,000 people an hour using it. Like, I don't know when you guys do successes. So I think in the next presentation, there should be, hey, I'm not interested in finding the right bike vendor. Why would I care about that? I'm an incubator. That's not my issue. My issue is, how does it help people, not just people on the one end of the socioeconomic, but across all of them. They could be rich people. People shouldn't be driving cars in communities if they can use bikes, right? It should be everybody. Should be 1,000 commuters. If 800 commuters can take a bike and not have an extra car, and there'd be 800 cars fewer, I would say that should be like a headline that should be sold across the United States, not just in the Hudson Valley. That's a phenomenal success. So I'm not sure what you guys think success means. Really don't understand it. The pricing is the pricing, because pricing is simply an adjusted, elastic thing that you're in control of. You could charge $0, you could charge $100. Who cares? That's up to you guys. It's not an Ossining issue. The board will decide, it won't decide, really totally immaterial. What's material is, what's the mission, what's the purpose? So if you say that mobility, I don't know if it's a human right, whatever, whatever that is. I'm sure that's lovely. What I think the mission is for more people to use anything and less fossil, and that it's safe. Because if it's not safe, so we have problems with bikes. I had guys running around here. We were waving to them. Were we not waving to all these people driving around on this? Because really the first thing was supposed to be safe pathways. The presentation leaves that to number 4 out of 6. So I have concerns about that. So, and which was brought up. Ossining has nothing to lose. As far as I'm concerned, I talked to the village manager. Whatever you guys get is more than we have today, which is 0. So it's all a win. But you really have to be very focused for the public's sake of what the public actually said about what your solution is and how it gets replicated into Tarrytown and all of that. Because if all it is to get a few people from point A to point B inside of Ossining, that's an awful lot of tax dollars NYSERDA is spending to figure out how to get a person from the deli to the commuting station inside of a 3.2 square mile village. I mean, yeah, we have 30,000 people, so it's densely populated. But seriously, would you feel good about that? I wouldn't if you got something that's replicated. So I'm very interested in what makes you go from point, like, I don't know in Buffalo, I forgot which one of you is doing Buffalo. You're doing Buffalo. Like, I don't know, did you look at the metrics and say, if we got to 100, we're then gonna like explode it into like every street in Buffalo. Buffalo, last time I was there, was pretty flat, right? And our capital is pretty flat. Where you have the bikes. That's a more hilly area? Okay, so you have the experience. It's a large, yeah, you know where I go, it just isn't. No, I'm not. I know where the capital is, but.
All the city can be served under.
Right,
We
but
have
it's all a
some
city.
capital.
That's, so that
can-
makes me very,
Whoever else speaking into the microphone.
yeah, she's on to you now to me, but it's okay. I'll repeat it. The capital is very hilly. It's just a big river town was the statement made. So I've seen bikes work for more than a decade. Okay, share bikes, fine. Not the conversations we've had. Next presentation has to have real metrics. Like, what do you consider success? And I leave it to you guys to find the best bike manufacturer, which, by the way, Drew, don't forget, was mentioned, the engagement. The heights of the bikes and the size of the bikes are way too big that we saw from the other vendors. I don't know if that ever came back up. It's been so, yeah, well, Jamie's about the average height of the people in our village. Sorry, Jamie, I'm the same height.
It's a fact. It's okay.
Yeah, but that, so I remember the engagement conversations, and I remember where we landed: affordability, ownership, beyond Ossining. And I still don't know what problem we're solving for just for Ossining, but I'm sure that'll come up. But the venues of where we're gonna have this, so there's connectivity. And I'm looking at you because you were there the whole time with me on this, was the number one concern. That's not here. So, and it may not be your role, I don't know, maybe somebody else's role, but it may be phase 2 or 3. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you had a meeting today about this.
We
Yeah.
met with the Public Works Engineering Director, Paul, whose last name I'm forgetting. I'm going to turn it
Paul
over to Mitch for
Fraioli.
this, but in the interest of your very long meeting, Mayor, we did cut out some
Okay.
details related to the metrics. We're happy to set those forward in a memo to your
Great.
benefit. The safety aspects, before I turn it over to Mitch, I will say the safety aspects related to your roadways were discussed, were primary inputs that we received from community members, and we've had many conversations with with Paul over the last year and a half or so about that, about how many miles could be committed through and scheduled through the village. We can't come in and reorganize your rehabilitation and maintenance program, but we have talked with him many times about the network which we recommend for riding, which includes low speed, low volume streets, which can still support the important parking services and driveway access, like not taking away any access or parking, but working through the rehabilitation program to create pavement markings and signs and traffic calming measures that bring all the speeds of all the users down to a closer level. So people who are biking are biking at the level that is comfortable for them, but people who are driving are driving maybe a little bit more slowly because the road is prioritized for that purpose.
Right.
And the village has committed some funding towards that end of building up a neighborhood greenway network, and NYSERDA has committed funding towards that end, towards building it up. How long that takes will be up to you all. We can't do that.
What percentage of the roads? Yeah, what percentage of the roads are viable?
Thank you. There is and I think it's probably a little bit dated, Drew, but there was a diagram in the memo that we circulated that was sort of, I think, like the second or third pass, basically not using Highland Avenue very specifically,
obviously.
but sort of looking at some of the, accessory roads to get you
Okay.
around and then across in a safe way. I think Drew and her team came up with a pretty extensive map to start off with. We have slowly whittled it back because, we know these roads a little bit better, and there were some that we sort of went back and forth on, but so we can probably get a larger version of that map to circulate.
And
Is
also,
the Croton is the Croton Aqueduct part of the, no,
Well,
that's a state,
you can ride on
people can
the
ride on it,
aqueduct,
right?
certainly.
But it's not,
Yeah,
because
but-
it's not our property. It's not
Is-
village road.
Oh, I don't know where Jamie went. But
No, it's a good idea though, because it's a state project and it's a state, it's a
Yeah.
state aqueduct.
yeah, and I think sort of
We
falls,
talked about the multimodal site and the park and ride aspect. So that is part, part of it.
yeah. I
No,
just,
it's just that the nice about the aqueduct is it actually goes through Irvington,
Oh, absolutely.
Tarrytown,
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
whole- And it's protected, but no good, right?
no?
Okay.
That's something to.
We worked
yeah.
on, and people will bike on the aqueduct. It's not viable as a recommendation from the village or for this team because the Old Croton Aqueduct does not support that as a place to encourage people to bicycle.
Oh, that was a different conversation than we had with
Great. Maybe it depends.
Linda
upon-
Cooper. So
Maybe it depends upon where.
Okay,
I know-
so
yeah,
we don't
so
have
that
to,
was
we
a-
don't need the
yeah.
discussion here.
Yeah.
All that matters is venues that you can actually go from point and out of Ossining. So you could go to the hospital, which is not in Ossining, which is one of our partners. I know I don't sound positive. I happen to like this project. I have invested so much of my own time and effort into this that I'm so frustrated at this continuous circling around the drain. Like I feel like I needed to move forward, not in a circular motion. And I didn't want this to become a bike discussion. I want it to be a mobility discussion for every member of our community. I like sit around telling people, I'm overweight and I ride this. Oh, if you're like heavy, you can't ride these. No, I ride them up the hill. I live on a hill like everybody else around here. Nobody lives on anything that's not a hill. They're great. They're fabulous. You could set the speeds on them. I'm a big proponent. I'm frustrated. But I also am frustrated because it is not, the presentation has to be clear about mission for the Hudson Valley, why this is not just an Austin, that we are an incubator and we're not necessarily a partner. We're an incubator, which is a little different than a partner, that this is good for not just us, but all of our neighbors, that it's a challenge, that cities have been able to do it, especially flat ones. And it's good that at least there's one hilly one for a change in that needs to be promoted, why it's good for people, why it's good. That's totally missing. And that has to be the only thing we talk about. And everything else should be driven to that and what will show success. Because everybody knows how much money was put into this and it's a big number. And that's what they remember. So I just want the mission, not your organization's mission. I mean, the mission of the project. The organization fits into that, obviously. And I think we've covered most of the stuff. And the aqueduct part, Karen, however that falls out, would be beautiful because that actually is a safe lane right through 40 miles. How perfect can that be? But that could be talked about with others more at a different time. That's, it is what it is.
there's parts of it through Ossining where it creates a nice jumping off point. So I think that's something, because that is a big factor. We've talked about putting a bike station. I think that, we're sort of at a point where we're doing a reset now. So maybe conversations that we would have had if things had gone differently initially. We've had some time. There's a lot of information out there, certainly a lot of work done, but I think we're at a reset point there. So it's important that if there's changes, that those are communicated broadly and that we're all on the same page as well. So.
Right, so I think the next steps from this, obviously you guys are meeting, I mean, none of us, I think maybe Dana will be able to come because we all work. That'll be great. Maybe Earth Day, they were here last time. There were a lot of people that got a chance to do that. I think you get the idea of like actually setting the horizon so people can see. It's hard to play a game without knowing the score, how the score's kept. When one wins, it's really hard to do this without us understanding. Sure, what's good for Ossining, but I would say for the Hudson Valley. So these are the next steps I'd like to see in the next presentation, like some numbers, and the taxpayers here should know that actually we don't, I mean, we indirectly pay because we all pay state taxes, but the money is funded because this is a sort of startup project. We, the village, except for the many hours of our own staff that have spent on this is not coming out of our tax dollars. And it's important for them to understand that this is for the greater good, and we're honored to be part of it as long as it keeps working. Is there anything I left off? Okay, fabulous. You can always call me an update and all of that as the deputy mayor. Also suggest there are any other trustees. This is very helpful. Hopefully we're moving forward at this point. And if I forgot anything, let me know, but because you're so involved in this, but I think we're good on this.
This was a good reset. Yes.
Okay, I do want to say that the bike share focus is the first one out. The ownership is something we actually did sell to the community as a part. In fact, I spent a lot of time talking about ownership, not about bike share. So I'm gonna have to sort of change also the way I talk about it, which is fine. I just need to know that that's like the first thing is a bike share, and then after that comes like the other pieces.
That is queued up for hopefully the Q3 of this year. So the ownership pathway is following right behind the bike share. But I guess while I have the mic, I just want to say, Mayor, we do appreciate all the dedication, the thought, and the effort you put into this. And some of the comments and the feedback you've given to us has been very helpful. I'm sorry the presentation tonight didn't really demonstrate a lot of the tangible progress you all clearly are looking for in this because of that investment. And there has been a lot of work going on and behind the scenes in the last 8 to 9 months to re-engage and to do all of that. But I understand that from a bottom line perspective, what's being shown to you, you've discussed before with people here. And I'm sorry that I'm here having a similar conversation with, I'm a new name and a new face, but the conversation hasn't changed. I can assure you that by the next time we come back for presentations, there will be more tangible progress. We can certainly contextualize this beyond Austining and make sure that that is clear. And those goals are not lost on us as well. I'm sorry that was not communicated in the presentation tonight, but we appreciate the commitment and the dedication you all have for this. And that's why we're here as well. So I'm really welcome the dialogue from this and appreciate a lot of the feedback that was brought up
And I
tonight.
think Friday will be very productive for you. It's like right there, people will go. I mean, I think the tactile part, people feel things, they see and they go, oh, this is great. So they'll get a better feeling for it and you'll get some feedback. Hopefully everybody will show up. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, gentlemen, also for coming down.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Valerie Monastra up. Valerie's here, continuing our conversation that we had initiated a few weeks ago. Tonight, she will be talking about parking and residential parking in particular, and some of our recommendations with regard to again, continuing the discussion from last time based on the board's comments, as well as EV chargers. So with that, I'd like to introduce Valerie Monastra from Nelson Pope Forties.
All right, good evening. So why don't we start with the table C, which is the table in the zoning code that specifically identifies minimum parking requirements. If you recall, I was here at a work session a couple weeks ago, and the board was interested in trying to unify the parking requirements for multifamily dwellings across the zoning districts. And I took a look at some of the neighboring communities and, in some of your cities, and basically there is no specific or standard out there. I think it really basically the standards are set based upon the conditions in a particular community or some of the goals that a community wants to achieve in terms of whether they want some additional development in a particular area or whether there is a parking issue and they want to make sure that new development does maintain or provide certain parking. So what I did, I took a look at your existing zoning districts, and they're basically minor tweaks. What I'm proposing is 1 space per unit for an efficiency, 1.5 spaces for 1 bedroom and 2 spaces for 2 bedroom, per bedroom.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
Sure.
And efficiency is a studio? Is that the same thing?
Yes, that's a studio, right? So it'd be 1 space for a studio, 1.5 spaces for 1 bedroom and 2 spaces for units with 2 or more bedrooms. This would be similar for all your plan center, your neighborhood center districts, your general business districts, your conservation development districts, and your waterfront districts. The only thing I'm proposing not to change is your MF1, which is your multifamily 1, multifamily 2, and planned residential districts. Those districts have actually been, they were zoned many years ago, and every one of them has development there, except for, I think PRD has one property, which is actually in front of the planning board at this point in time, and it's a small property that's undeveloped, but for the most part, they're already existing with either apartments or condominium developments, and so I'm recommending keeping those the same so that we just don't create any non-conformities that's not necessary.
Because it's already so developed. that
Exactly.
Nothing new is going up there is what you're,
That's correct.
except one little tiny plot that's.
Right.
Okay, that's what you're saying.
Yes, but everywhere else where there is potential redevelopment potential, is now gonna have uniform, parking requirements for, multifamily dwelling units.
That's what we talked about, right? One parking for, what is it now? Just remind me.
So,
So it depends, sure, you have 1.1.25 in some, and then 1.5 in another ones.
For the
For the
one bedroom.
efficiency, yeah, for the efficiency.
Oh, for the
ones.
studios.
And then pretty much, I think the part that you sort of didn't mention for the MF1s, MF2s and PRD zones, you're pretty much sort of matching what you're proposing in a way.
to a larger extent, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So those,
They're equalizing it.
yeah, so I think for me, and just. Sure, if you guys know.
No, I mean, I think she's making the recommendation, you're done, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
am.
Bless you.
Thank you.
So, can I-
Yeah, yeah,
All
go
right.
ahead.
All right,
I'm
so that's fine. So thank you, Valerie. I think for me, this makes more sense.
Okay.
Than anything else. I just had a quick question for you,
Sure.
because on the PRD, you have, obviously the 2 bedrooms.
Yes.
And then it goes to a half a space for each additional bedroom,
That's
sure.
correct.
But that's not what you're recommending on the other ones.
No, and I think PRD tends to be more of your condominium developments as
Okay.
opposed to where a number of the other zoning districts that are identified for not having the additional, you already have potentially access to public parking for visitors. And they tend to be more of like your apartment complexes as opposed to your condominium developments.
And those, and I know we talked about this, those, we do have a provision on a code right now that requires some sort of percentage for visitors, correct?
We do not,
We do not.
no.
I thought we
do-
talked about that.
We do not have anything in the zoning for that, but if you want for us to consider that, we can. I think when you're dealing with, especially in your more denser areas, when you start adding in visitor spaces, it really becomes difficult, and you might start finding that, one, you already have, for example, the payment in lieu of parking, so then a developer is gonna end up having to potentially petition for that more often, which, that might be something that the village board is interested in, but I think you'll find that they're not gonna be able to accommodate those additional visitor spaces.
Okay. I'll defer that for now to the rest of the board, see if they have any questions. But thank you for doing this. I think that's very helpful and unifies a lot of the stuff that we have some concerns.
You're welcome.
So I think that's basically what we asked for last time. I'm not clear about the other zones because I thought that what we were changing is only for things going forward. So if I'm in a zone where we're not changing because it's already developed, what happens when somebody buys 2 or 3 adjoining lots, takes it down? They're just following the old zone.
No, they would be subject to the new zoning regulations.
No,
Not if
I-
it's not zoned that
I
way.
think you're referring to the MF1s and MF2s and
Yeah.
PRDs. So that's.
So you would basically, so for example, it would be like, let's just take us, I think Snowden, no, Snowden's not one, but one of your apartment complexes,
Mhm.
even one of the
Mhm.
apartment complexes on Croton Avenue.
Mhm.
Somebody would have to come in and say, we're gonna demolish all those apartment buildings and then rebuild. And at that point, they would go under what's currently there.
Right.
But I think the chances of that are small. What's more likely to have a chance is somebody to come in and say, we're gonna rehabilitate, or maybe we want to add on a
Mhm.
little bit more onto that property. And then that's where, the existing would come into play. And I'm recommending keeping those the same because then if for some reason you dramatically change those ratios, then they're potentially going to need variances and it's going to come along a little bit more complex to do rehabilitation or some tweaking on those
So
sites.
if my piggyback on what Valerie's saying, I'm gonna give you an example of the MF2, sure, the charts that she has in here. For efficiency slash studio apartments, her proposal is one space right now, and the rest of the songs. For the MF2 is 1.25. So, and the other ones pretty much stay the same, 1.5 in 2 spaces. So we literally are changing to match the MF1s and MF2s and PRD. So I think you're concerned, I think I see your point, but they won't be able to do anything else from what they already have established already. They cannot go less, more or less, what I'm saying. The same thing for the PRDs. I think even like if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, you know, if they want a 3-bedroom, they have to add a 0.5 additional to that. So I think I'm comfortable if someone would like to do that. I'm very comfortable with this.
So what I'm seeing around Westchester and under Hochul's new rules is what I saw in Mount Kisco when I moved here. They tore lots of stuff down so they can build up. So it is not unusual and densely populated when you're urbanizing.
Right.
Already what we would think is urbanization? No, because they're actually doing more. They've done it in Chappaqua even. I mean, they're doing it everywhere. And certainly they're doing it in cities, which is a whole different ballgame. So I don't want to be sitting here in 2 years and say, oh, so they took down 3 or 4 or 5 buildings that we didn't expect them to. It's unusual to do that. They're not retrofitting, they're actually building new. The variances, from what I'm seeing in planning, zoning, et cetera, all they do is sit there and go, nope, that's what the rule says, therefore we do. So all a variance is usually you get what you want. No, you're not usually, you get a lot of what you want because what you're doing is following the code. You change the code to say going for the future. So the question is whether I'm right or not, that we're going to see much more urbanization as we develop more and more. Not we, but the entire lower part of New York State, which is us. So I'm just thinking of the future, but I guess somebody else in 2 years can change the codes at that
I
point.
mean, I also think I'm just gonna highlight that the MF1, MF2 and the PRD are actually right now, their current parking requirements are actually greater than what we're.
So it's
proposing in
already
the-
covered.
Right.
Okay, well, that's what we asked for. I think we all pretty good.
Who will like the visitors portion?
The visitors, yes, but I think some places have it and some don't. That's actually creates problems in the residential areas, because every kid gets a birthday and 20 cars are lined up and anniversary. I mean, that's like the way humans live, right? We seem to be planning for developers, not for humans.
But that will be the opportunity for us to actually change some of that.
Yeah, but I'm not sure there is room to do that, because as Richie pointed out. This is a balancing act in getting good developers, I mean, not crappy developers, but good developers. And providing decent housing, you gotta balance where everybody can win in this, so. I mean, this is what we asked for, I think we're okay. You know?
And keep in mind, you can always modify the zoning regulations down the line as well. So if for some reason, because we just instituted the payment in lieu of parking. So I think that's going to ultimately have an effect on generating more parking spaces on site. And so as we see new development come into in the pipeline, then we can always reassess where things are.
Okay. Everybody seems to be okay with it, all right, thank you, Valerie.
All
I
right.
know you have more.
Yes, one more thing. So EV charging. So this was actually brought up last time, and ironically, it's very timely because we actually have a potential planning board submission coming in dealing with these new Volta charging stations. So it's a third party charging company, and on the charging stations themselves, their model is that they're able to provide less expensive charging because they have advertisements on the actual charging stations themselves. So in the Village of Austining zoning under like signs, the definition of billboard, technically, these would fall under that definition because billboards are any sign that advertises for like a business that's not on that particular property. So the applicants met with the building inspector and myself and also your assistant village manager. And so there was a discussion that they were anticipating potentially petitioning the village board to make some modifications to the zoning in order to incorporate this the volta charging. And so before they did so, we suggested coming to this board to talk about doing a little bit more of just not for one particular, third party EV charging company, but to actually look at the zoning and incorporating charging stations and regulations into the zoning, because more of these charging stations are going to be coming online, and you have different levels. You have your level 1, which you typically find in residential. You have level 2, which ironically now is you are finding it more in residential as well as in, commercial areas. And then you have level 3 charging stations, which are your faster charging stations, but also do require even more review in terms of building department and electrical output. So what we'd like to do is probably go through the zoning and specifically identify a process. So if you're coming in with certain level charging stations, what becomes an administrative process, what becomes ones that you have to go before the planning board, and then so that there's no confusion as these different models come on the market, which process they would need to go through in order to be able to implement those on a particular property.
Pays the electricity on those things.
So who pays for the electricity? I believe it's either, I don't know the setup. I would assume it's the third party. So Volta would come in, they would pay for the electricity, but it's really the end user, which would be paying for the ability to use those charging stations.
And okay. So 100%, this should not go to any single vendor. I mean, that's silly.
No, it's not. So what you would ultimately, when we would modify the zoning, we would specifically modify your use tables to allow for EV, like for level 3 charging stations in certain zoning districts versus other zoning districts. We'd also develop a permitting process for the various level EV charging levels, and then also potentially some design standards, as well as what I'm calling decommissioning requirements, which basically so that if the EV charging stations are no longer active, that we do require those to be decommissioned.
And the vendor has to pay for it.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't really get I know what the levels are because I have 3 of these things. Don't know why we're even permitting based on level. It's a charger, and they're going to change because the cars went from 40 to 50 miles on a juice up. Now it's at 250. There'll be 350 to 500 soon. Like, that's just happening. So I can't go to a lot of the EV chargers because I'd have to be there 20 hours.
Right.
That's silly.
Right.
They should all be high speed, because why would you not do anything but high speed cars?
Right.
You have to park there for the, hours to get anything done. They're actually more expensive because of that, because you pay by the minute or whatever. So again, we got to plan for the next 5 years, not for the last 5 years. And decommissioning, thank God you finally jumped on that, because they just leave them, and taking them apart is as expensive as putting them in. So the request from the board, if I get this right, is, so I actually don't think you should do any leveling in this permitting, because I don't know why you need leveling.
So we could, if the board does not want to differentiate pond levels, we could just create an administrative permitting process, right? And you don't necessarily have to go to the planning board for site plan approval for like level 3 EV charging stations. And we can easily work that into the overall zoning. The reason why we were suggesting on levels is that because there are some, residential homes actually have the EV charging stations within them. And so instead of those types of EV charging stations having to go before the the planning board, it
Right.
would be more of the ones like, for example, that are interested in going into like the Volta is a great example that they're interested in going to the Stop and Shop parking lot. So in those types of situations, do you have them come before the planning board for site plan approval? Versus ones that are going into a single or two-family home or a multifamily complex.
Mayor, if I may.
Mhm.
I think they should all go for site plan approval. That's my opinion. It's a safety factor. They should be inspected. That's,
Right.
they should, and whether it's Stop and Shop's parking lot or somebody's house, it's a safety factor and they should all be inspected and they should go through the process.
Right,
That's-
absolutely. And I just want to clarify, so when all EV charging stations would require some sort of administrative permit, which require an inspection, which require also information on terms of like safety, electrical equipment. There are actually the New York State actually put out some, recently, I think they're working on a model law, but until that actually happens, this would be sort of a plug-in for that. But they did provide some information recently in terms of different levels and what types of, whether they fall under the residential code or the uniform code and what types of inspections are required. So they're starting to look at these and we would follow very similar application in the zoning. But the big question is whether we want actually to have to go to a planning board for review versus just doing something more through the building department.
Are you talking? It looks like.
Yeah, I was,
Okay.
regarding to the levels, to me, I agree with the mayor in this, because I'm looking at 1, 2, and 3, to me is irrelevant, sure. The process is the process. Regarding the application and who reviews what,
Right.
I will break it into 2 different categories. The residential,
Mhm.
which is, I will take it as, I'm not sure, maybe Maddie or Valerie, solar panels in a house. Do they go in front of the architectural review
Yep.
board?
The building
So,
department comes out.
right, that's something else we're gonna.
No, I'm just talking about in
Right,
general.
right now,
They go in front of the architectural review board?
not for rooftop solar. They
Okay,
just go.
so just pretty much a straight up permit and they get review, okay. So for me, that will be the process, sure, for the residential. If someone wants to come in and put
Single
some sort.
or multi? When you
S-
say residential.
Residential meaning you only have 1 and 2 families.
Okay.
Yeah, after that is pretty much multifamily, sure, and then sort of like kind of falls in a different category no matter what. For me in the big commercials like in Stop and Shop, definitely site plan approval. The reason why I'm saying that is because we were just talking about parking,
Yeah, they-
in a parking, when you
Right,
do a site plan approval, you have some, number of parking and all those are open to the public.
right,
When you start taking away different parking sort of spots, you're affecting the site plan.
right.
You have to prove. So for me, in the commercial, that will be when you go to the site plan approval to in front of the board. But besides that, in a residential level, I think it should be just a straight up permit. If that's the way we're going to go, I was going to ask you because I know the municipalities are not really looking into this right now. I know the state is looking, but if we're waiting for the state to come up with something, we're
Right.
gonna come up
Well, I can,
2025, maybe 2026.
I can tell you, a lot of municipalities are now starting to pay attention to this because like the companies like Volta are coming, there's a big push for installation of EV charging stations. And so now there's multiple applications coming through
But
and
not in residential
No,
homes.
no.
right, not necessarily in residential homes, although residential homes now, it's very commonplace to have like level 2 charging. So you're gonna want to start having a little bit more
Yeah, but
permitting.
that's, the whole process itself is like you
Right.
have an engineer, you have a design, you have setback
Exactly, so we wanna
requirements,
put-
all the
right.
stuff and the inspections are already in place. So for me, that portion is already, for me, the more concerning is the site plan approval
Right.
portion
Right.
on the commercial.
The-
Or even like big multi-families.
So level 1 and 2 are just plugs in the wall. If you have a garage and you bought the house and there's a plug there, That's all, it's already there.
Yeah.
Why do you need approval? It's like plugging anything in.
Right, you don't necessarily, but if you're putting a new one in, just to clarify, or just to have some regulations, just stating that you have to go to the building department, you
Do you
actually
have to
go.
put a new plug in? the wall?
Well, I mean, I think that's what the new guidance is basically saying, that they have to meet, you know, the residential.
Yeah, but first of all, I had all the plugs, because the guy who owned the house before me was plugging stuff in there. It's like a workstation. My garage is, you
On the
can't
side,
get
yeah,
it,
you
it's on
can-
the
yeah,
side,
yeah.
so. Then he had like a work thing there. But the other one we did, in a residential garage, in a single family and a two family, if there is a plug there that works, in today's world, unlike what it used to be, it's the level 1 and 2 is simply a plug. There is no, there's no work, there's you plug into the wall. So what are we asking people to do?
So if you just give me a second, I can pull up.
I I understand what you're saying, but again, I'm gonna stress the level of safety. That plug is shared with other plugs throughout your house. So.
But if you have an electric lawnmower, you do the same thing. If you
that's two
have
different
a,
things.
if you
Two
have a
different things.
floodlight, you plug into the same. plug. You're not
Apples,
supposed
apples
to-
and oranges,
You're not supposed to plug more than one. It's like
No,
everything. is
apples and
just-
oranges. There's plug strips in every garage.
Two into my house.
Yeah,
Had to be inspected, had to go through the whole 9 yards, I had to pull new power in. Like, in fact, when we used the plug, we almost had a fire, because you can't just use.
So I think it's a
we had to put
dedicated,
hole there.
it's a
It's called the
dedicated,
box.
yeah.
We had to put a.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a dedicated line
all
to the
set up.
electrical
We just
panel.
wanna-
Inspected.
Right,
It's
if
a
we just wanna
separate,
make sure that the public understands, and that it's written actually in your code, that they have to go to the building department, right?
Yeah,
and
but
pull a
that's what I'm
permit.
saying. To
That's
me,
it.
that, but on the residential end, you know, did you have to go to the planning board?
you just said.
No,
I don't think we're talking about,
I know.
you're talking about inspections, not going to the
Right.
planning.
I'm not saying that, no, of course, and that's what I said. I
Right.
think for me, in the residential, end, it's just a straight up building permit. You know, when it gets to a different level, multifamilies, you know, that multifamily and commercial portion, I want to say, that's when, besides permitting, you know, a site plan approval is, it should be required.
so so what we can do is we can actually develop very specific, like an administrative process for, when I say administrative, through the building department, simple permit for the residential homes. And then for multifamily and commercial, any commercial properties, if they're going to include EV charging stations, those would go before the planning board for site plan approval.
Right. And they don't require ballers, by the way.
Right?
Now, there was a question, someone upstate in one of the conferences that I was on, when they were talking about, do I need to put ballers around? It does not require.
Feel
Right.
free to hit it.
I know.
Okay,
Yeah,
and the Tesla is different because Tesla pays for those, right? Like at the Arcadian.
Well, I mean, so Tesla would theoretically have to go before the planning board to install the ones that they did in the Arcadian.
so they did,
I mean, it's already done.
did they do
Right.
that?
Actually, I don't know, but I believe that the first few were just automatically
Those were not
allowed, right?
Teslas. The
Right.
first ones that are in the corner.
Right,
Yeah,
but those
not.
were just,
Right.
go ahead, we'll mark it on the site plan and you can
Okay.
move forward.
Stop and Shop has one right now.
It does. And that's the other issue, and that's why we want to put the decommissioning, right? Because I don't know if that, like, most of these
It may be
seem to
still
have a
old and
life
nobody's
of like,
using it.
exactly. Some of them have like only a life of like 10 years, or if for some reason a particular company decides to not continue maintaining them or break whatever lease, or, you know, the lease ends with that particular property owner, that it does kind of force the
So-
decommissioning.
So I have a Stuart question. With these bigger companies and they're in these parking lots and we're talking about decommissioning, is there a way we could set up like an escrow to hold them to that? That if they don't take it, like a first month's deposit?
Sort of like we would do with telecommunications, and that if you're gonna decommission it, we're gonna hold a certain amount until that point.
Until it's done.
You could, I don't see why you could not do something.
Well, who would you do it? Do you do it to the owner of the
company,
property owner?
the vendor.
Not the vendor, the property owner. The vendor is paying the property owner. It's
Well,
on
the
their property.
Telecommunications case, you make the telecommunications company.
Right.
Put an escrow down, so they're technically the lessee. of the particular space. It's not. the
Because they're a
owner
lessee
doing it.
from us, but in this case, they're a lessee from the people that own the property, the Arcadian, for
But
example.
we require it similarly if, not just for 56 Brown, but we require it on 70 Grove.
Mhm.
They're required to do that because if they have to decommission, we want to be able to have a fund if they don't take it down. We would be able to do that.
I want to move into 30,000 feet. All of this conversation, the goal is to have more EV stations.
Right.
The goal is to have more chargers. The goal is not to, so we need to find a nice balance.
Right.
Balancing all of the stuff, whether it's the money or the safety, the decommissioning, the placing them in there, the parking spots that they take up. The goal is to have the ability for people, especially when they're not in single-family homes, to own electric vehicles.
Right.
So that, we lower the emission level.
Raccoons.
So, let us not make people go through hurdles over maybes. Most of these chargers actually shut themselves off, it's an electrical outlet, so you have to have an electrician, otherwise you're setting your house on fire. Like you would if you put in a new, whatever, garage doors that weren't there before.
Right.
If you take manual garage doors to electric, you gotta have an electrician, it doesn't just happen. So I just wanna keep what's the goal of pricing? What's the goal of all of this? It's not to create more aggravation and more problems. There are in White Plains parking lots where if you park at an EV station, you don't pay for it. Others, you do.
Right.
Because they're encouraging people to actually have electric cars and make it convenient for them. So let's remember pricing has a purpose, we're not gonna get rich over pricing.
Right.
The decommissioning could be expensive. We've had a few issues. So we're learning from that. I get it, but we also have to figure out how to encourage, not discourage. So I leave it to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just so I pulled up so for example, residential garages, this is from the New York State Standards of Buildings and Codes. Residential garages, the EV charging station would fall under the residential code of New York State. But for example, freestanding EV charging stations, those would fall under the uniform code. So we're just gonna bring this information
Okay.
into the zoning so that it's clear as to,
Good.
what standards they would have to follow. I mean, it's gonna be more generalized, but at least it's a framework that once the state, or if the state does come out with something that's a little bit more defined, then we can go ahead and just and replace what's necessary.
That sounds good. I just had a quick question off topic. Well, sort of topic of downward. So on the previous, sort of the first presentation, they showed up a map with the EV chargers, which an Austin has 3. I don't think that's accurate. I think we have more than 3.
Well, there's a town and a village, right? So-
No, I'm looking at the bills. No, I think there's more like Arcadian, maybe, and the other one in train station.
Train station, Cedar Lane Park,
Yeah, this one is our not Cedar Lane. No, I'm not.
Operations Center. No, I'm just trying to think of the ones. Yeah.
Because this, there are 3 in town and 3 in the village.
Right. Those are both in Arcadian, right?
Yeah,
Johnson, then guess
that's
there's
what I think. Yeah,
Train station.
yeah, and that's it. On this
Well,
map,
the-
on
there's
this
an old
map,
We have them at the community.
I know.
Oh.
So,
Okay,
Okay.
so maybe a map.
next.
Sorry, I was distracted by the rock.
Okay.
No,
next.
Valerie knows.
Valerie.
I'm done.
Okay,
I'm done.
that's it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. So I'm up next and I am going to be presenting our major project work plan for 2024. Jamie, if you can pull that up. This is always the hardest part. I can't see what's in front of me or I can't see what's far from me, so. So as you know, we have a lot of projects going on in the village and we're just starting to initiate the community engagement plan for this and coordinate all the activities and information that we're putting out here. So this is really just to give the board an overview of what we're thinking, certainly get your input, and then we're excited to get started on this. We have 4 downtown revitalization initiative projects. The multimodal transportation hub, which I had sent the board an email earlier this evening. We just, we've been talking to the design firm we're working with, and we want to start doing this month, and well, it's almost March, in March, doing a site visit that sort of scopes out the area that we're working with, invite the most immediate neighbors there, and then follow that up with a workshop at the community center. We will be also issuing an RFP for design service for the community center soon, and then we will start engagement for that. Enhancing and expanding Market Square, the public plaza area, and we also have streetscaping for Station Plaza. In addition to that, we also have 3 other projects. So the Route 9 Road Diet. Jamie, if you can sort of hit that dot. And this is just taking you through the road diet project, which is the narrowing of Route 9 between Cedar Lane and Nelson Park, essentially bringing it from 4 lanes down to 1 lane each way. We have started some preliminary discussions with the school district, and we will be re-engaging as we start that design work. Go ahead to the next, and then we have the Spring on Main, which, while this is not a DRI project, it was necessary to sort of catalyze the DRI projects on Main Street. This is a mixed use development that we are envisioning for the post office lots. Wilder Balter and St. Catherine Group were chosen as the developers for this. So we want to be working with them, first getting community engagement to inform this project better and bring it to concept to a final plan stage, and then get them through the planning process. So when we're finished with the multimodal site, we can start working on this. Obviously, we need to address the parking before we take away any surface parking. Next slide, please.
Hey, Karen, when I looked at this, what would be helpful, because this is great, but a lot of it is now redundant it would be helpful if we just said, since whenever the last presentation, like talk about
Sure.
the update. I mean, I think it's important to have the background, because if somebody's seeing it it has to be a standalone document, no matter
Right.
when you pick it up. Also putting the dates on the bottom of each of this.
No problem.
Because people pick, how we've had this issue where people will pick out whether it's this project or another, and they think this is it, but in fact, there were 3 documents before, and it's building on it. So just since the last time, what
Right.
progress, have we made and all that? Because you've made a lot of progress, obviously.
Yeah, we have, and we heard a lot about Project Mover, but obviously we're working on that in concert with everything else. And again, the big takeaway here is these projects really work very strategically. Each of them in and of itself is somewhat transformational for the village, but collectively really provides a tremendous amount of positive impact for a wide range of community development and economic development, sustainability issues. Next slide, please. So our goal of community engagement is to make sure that stakeholders are aware of what we're doing, as well as getting input with them for specific projects. Strategy is basically looking at each discrete project and figuring out how we can best communicate that project, how we sequence them, how we keep the momentum going. And that would include site-specific events, workshops, neighborhood stakeholder gatherings, virtual webinars, as we've done in the past, social media, and online surveys. Phase 1, we would be talking about the projects that are most immediate, Project Mover, Route 9 Road Diet, and the Multimodal Transportation Hub. So this gives a bit of insight into what we're looking at, and I think we heard a lot about Project Mover today. I mentioned Route 9 road diet. We've already been talking to the school district since some of their work that they're planning at AMD and around Claremont School, that area will, they have some traffic studies going on that intersection. So we're making sure that these dovetail. I did speak to the superintendent this week, and she is very enthusiastic about the road diet, and she feels that really dovetails nicely with their goals and objectives for that immediate intersection, as well as the overall walkability of the village, safety, really an extension of the things we're doing in other parts of the village to have crosswalks and ensure that our streets are safe and that we're encouraging walkability and safe vehicular traffic. The multimodal transportation hub, as I mentioned, we're getting ready to kick that off as well. And we're looking forward to working with the placemaking committee, because that's been one of the sites that's identified for some public art and other ways to make that a much more attractive facility as opposed to just a big old parking garage.
So
Next.
I'm
Sorry.
not understanding how the presentation is set up. I can read and I understand. So this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. How did you decide?
Mayor, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm not sure like how you set up. I read the words. I know the projects like the back. I get all of that.
So phase
but-
1, yeah, so it's basically the timing of the projects. Phase 1 are the projects that are pending immediately. So for various reasons, Project Mover is already started. We are on somewhat of a deadline with DOT on Route 9 road diet, and then multimodal site is the first project that we have to do in terms of making sure that we can facilitate the other Main Street projects. That's not to say, so it's really just a way we group them for, and I think it's more internal, but sequencing of them was important. Now, that's not to say that close on the heels, we would also be doing somewhat simultaneously the community center as well. So it's,
So this was sort of hard to depict, and Karen and I kind of went back and forth a couple of times about how to properly convey this. What might be helpful is to pause and go to the very last slide, the big table, so you can just sort of see. Do you think that's?
let's go through it,
Okay.
because we're going to get there soon enough. And
Can I tell you what's bothering me here? And I think it's because, everybody processes information differently, right?
Understood.
So I have a feeling this was written and is very clear to some people sitting here. But for others, in the way we process, it's not, so isn't working for me. And I know it's just me. Like, I know, like, you had something in mind and I'm not getting it. All the words are right, all the projects are right. But it feels that if I saw this and didn't know what's not on this paper, it feels like this is a prioritization of 1, 2, and 3, which is
yeah.
not in line necessarily with everybody's opinion of what, almost very close, but not quite in line with our priorities of what gets done first, what gets the second, what gets done third, versus, well, we've moved more on this, therefore it's in phase 1. So like, it has to be like clearer on
We
that.
could certainly change that language, and I completely understand. It makes it look like a time, it is really based on timing. So we'll give some thought to how to do this. Maybe I agree. We kind of struggled with this and maybe a little awkward, and maybe we were relying more on the form of the Prezi than we were on what we were trying to convey. So it may be an issue where form took precedence over function in that regard. So but then we're going to be working on them in this sequence largely because part of the timing of, getting grants, part of the timing of what we have to do specific on our sort of road parking projects. But in no way, shape, or form does this mean we're prioritizing those over anything else. It's really more of a timing issue. So if we go to the next bullet, let us say the next, for lack of a better way, group of projects, We also have community center and Spring on Main, which is our mixed use development. So again, I think that's good input, Mayor, and yeah, as I'm reading this, I kind of see what you're saying. But we also are going to be doing the community center. We will be issuing the RFP, and I'm thinking that maybe, I know we wanted to wait for the contract, but I think we're getting close to being able to issue it. And yeah, so we're going to be issuing that. We'll be evaluating, hopefully the timing of getting somebody on board to do this coincides with us getting a signed document from the state and we hit the ground running. So that will open up a whole new realm of community engagement for what those projects are going to look like. And I think importantly, if we go into the next little dot there, project specific engagement, the community center, you know, I think that's going to be a really fun and exciting project because there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of improvements that we can make that affect everybody who uses that center, and taking that box and re-envisioning it and looking at how we can use it more effectively and more dynamically, I think is something that we fun to get the whole community involved. And we certainly have a very enthusiastic Recreation Advisory Board helping to support that, as well as I believe this would be also another good opportunity for the placemaking committee, as well as the youth council, who is obviously got a big stake in this too. Exciting projects. And then the Spring on Main concept, we've talked to Wilder Walter, and we want to continue on the Transformational Thursday concept or series similar to what we did for 30 Water Street, to get engagement about what we want to see at that facility, and then also address obviously issues and concerns people always have about any sort of development of that nature. Next slide, please. And then for we're not going to call this phase 3. We're just going to say the next, projects that we're going to be talking about are the Market Square and Station Plaza. Now, Market Square is really looking at our current Market Square and looking at ways in terms of re-landscaping it, taking away the surface parking and expanding it as a public gathering area. Again, a really great placemaking project, lots of opportunity for community engagement. But that will come a little bit later in terms of the execution of it, because it will be dependent on making sure that these other projects are through, and we have the space now and ability to commit to that without having to worry about displacing parking and, dealing with a heavy construction going on across the street. Station Plaza, which is streetscaping down in the Station Plaza area, will be timed to coordinate with the 30 Water Street project, because at that point, while the developer is doing the streetscaping on Water Street, we will link that together and augment what they're doing in streetscaping on Water Street and on Main Street in the Station Plaza area. And certainly we've been already, because we're talking about the solar array down there. We have interested neighbors and businesses down there. And if we go to the project specific engagement dot there, again, similar to what we've done before, engaging the community in different ways, as we've talked with the placemaking committee, rec advisory board, not being too redundant, making sure that, leveraging surveys as well as in-person and virtual engagement. And a lot of neighborhood touch too on the things that we know where the neighbors in particular are going to be concerned. So we've already had conversations about being able to do this in a way where we can go to people where they are. So if you go to the next slide, please. So one thing we've learned is we like talking about what we're doing, and we like doing community engagement, and we don't have a problem with doing iterations of it. We've already talked to some businesses that are willing to host sort of information gathering, community engagement events at their businesses to deal specifically with issues that are immediately impacting their particular neighborhood as well as other projects throughout the village and connecting those, linking those together. So in this case, the sessions we might do might be very, very specific to say we're down at Station Plaza talking about very specific things about 30 Water Street or streetscaping, but it would be also an opportunity to talk about how that connects the connectivity to Upper Main Street and other opportunities at the waterfront and things that are going on there that also impact. And all of these things collectively, we hope that we will be able to get the word out as much as possible to as many people as possible. And with the help of our committees and with the board and other stakeholders, we'll make sure that, you know, of course, our first responders, all the people who are necessary to make sure these projects are successful to the fullest degree possible are engaged and have an opportunity to weigh in.
Right, and I think we also talked about, like, for example, if there are certain planning aspects of, you know, that are coming through the pipeline or even some rezonings or zoning changes, those would be opportune times to actually get engaged with the, you know, the people that live within those areas and get their feedback onto what they want to see. So like, for example, Secor Road is a good example of like where we could start engaging a little bit more with the public to get their feedback on thoughts for that particular area as well.
Great. And it's also responsive to, thank you, Valerie, that's a really good point. And it's been responsive to some of the questions that we've been getting from various, whether it's business owners or local residents who really want to understand what's going to happen and how it's going to impact them and you know, have asked to be, you know, along the way, we've met a lot of people who want to become part of the process and now they are. So we keep trying to bring more and more people along as we go. Next slide, please. So this sort of puts together a little bit, we can take questions now. This gives a little bit of an idea, you know, of a schedule. And again, these are generalized times at this point, but the bulk of the work is going to start now and hopefully be wrapping up by the end of 2027. And then the chart that Maddie was talking to that's quite large, but gives more detail in terms of more of a Gantt chart on what we're looking to do and when we're scheduling is detail that we can have online as well as, you know, make available for the board and other staff members, stakeholders to sort of understand the schedule of work and what we're looking to do in terms of not only communication, community engagement, but actual project construction, execution, design phases and what have you. And that is an overview of what we plan on starting to do very, very soon.
Very nice. Thank you. Oh, I feel like, is this on? Very nice. Thank you. Always love these charts. Okay, I'm going to go to my left and see if there are any questions or comments. Sir?
Lots of questions. I'm gonna
I'm
start.
going to go to my right.
So I'm gonna start with this. I'm hoping it's the easy one. What's the status on the pool?
I actually, during exec, we have some things that came up very late today that I want to talk to the board about. But for the most part, the work is going along. But there are some things I need to talk
So
about.
it's
to the
not gonna
board.
be ready for March.
I need to talk to the board and exec. It remain,
Okay.
it
After executive session, if we
It
will tell the
remains
public what the deal is.
somewhat unseen at this point.
Right.
We received some information very late in the day today.
Okay, all right. So I'm not gonna talk about timelines, I think, because it would be unfair to do that. I think I want to talk about more or less,
Manny, I'm sorry, I can't hear you,
He's not
I
saying
wasn't
anything
talking
yet.
anything yet, so.
but I wasn't barely able to hear him before, but thank you.
And I think I agree with the mayor and maybe some of the stuff in here, even though I totally understand the phasing, I will actually put the community center on phase one that you guys call it, more or less, because I think for me, that's a critical portion. But let me ask you, in regards to the community center itself, you talk about the design phases. And I don't want to go too much into the details, but a couple years, about a year ago, more or less, we were talking about different stages on here. Is that the case on this point on, or are we talking about redoing the whole design of the community center to what we want it to be on at that point?
So it really is an extension of the work that we had done preliminarily. So we had used some of the work that we had done when we were really looking at space optimization initially, and then it kind of blossomed into a more robust project. And that was really super helpful when we were going to the DRI, which sort of asked you for to provide a concept, but then ask you to refine it and then ask for later on, after you do all that, more community input. So we're in a good place for that. So I think that we're going to refresh some of what was done and then relook at it and again, solicit input from the community, use what we know now in terms of how the space is being used. We have a much more robust youth bureau right now, looking at that space with some of the opportunities and challenges that we have for our senior program, all these different programs. And knowing that within the footprint of that building, that you have a lot of opportunity.
So to answer the question, I guess, to answer sort of the question that I was asking, is like, yes, we're gonna combine all this stuff and all the ideas on all the program that we had into this. I'm gonna call it phase 2. Because we did phase 1, which is more or less the pool, the locker rooms. Now we're gonna move it to phase 2, and we're gonna address all those issues there.
Yes,
Okay.
if I understand now. So the
Yeah.
rest of the center will be looking at that. We'll come up with a design for
Okay.
the rest of the center to
Correct.
complement the work done on the pool, but then once that's done, we'll go forward with the bidding of that work out and getting it done.
Fantastic. So now, and I'm again, so I'm not gonna put years on here because we're talking about years. I'm gonna sort of like quarters. The transportation hub itself. So we are gonna be ready for bidding at the end of the year.
I think so. We're starting, community engagement now. It is what it is. Like there's some elements of what we want it to look and feel like, but I don't think that this is as extensive a design project as say the water treatment plan was. So,
No, I agree.
I think we should be.
And I'm glad, for me, it's a little bit too late. Maybe the beginning of the first quarter, I think will be helpful, or the fourth quarter will be helpful, because to me, without this, phase 2 part is gonna be affected, and phase 3 on this one is gonna delay it and it's gonna push everything else over.
So I'm trying to balance what I'd like to happen, what I think can happen, what I know might happen. So these are very loose general dates. Absolutely, if we can get it done earlier, we're gonna try, but every time I think we've planned enough time for something, things just take time. So we, as soon as we can get it done, we want to get it done. We also want to get it done in a way like it will be challenging to be doing that. And as we do the road diet too, which is happening somewhat simultaneously, we're going to want to make sure that we're not doing all this road and parking work. So, we're going to have to stage the construction
No,
within.
and I understand that, but you're
Yeah.
kind of putting yourself into that position based on your
Right.
text in here. You have both of them coming out of the fourth quarter of this year, and then construction on the second quarter of 2025, which,
Yeah.
to me,
No, what I was gonna say is I think there's the chart you're looking at is more like construction,
but
right?
I'm
With-
looking at this.
Yeah, no, I understand, but like, so I think when we can go back and, because there's clearly the design and planning phases, right? And sometimes those take longer, then you have like the actual like bidding phases, and then you have the
Well,
actual construction
so-
phases.
So I know all that stuff. What I'm
Right.
saying here, based on this information, the design and architectural happens on the first quarter of 2024. That's what we have in
Right.
here.
So-
And then bidding in a work construction is on the fourth quarter of this year. Unless we're in 2000.
So again, and that's a point I think it's important. This is very sort of basic right now. This is like about how much time it's take. The likelihood that we're gonna have to make adjustments, not necessarily, we can bid, but when we actually start, like when the shovel gets hit in the ground for each project and how we stage that, I don't even I don't really know yet what that's gonna look like.
And maybe
So we're
ju-
just,
Just 2025 instead of first quarter of 2000.
that's fine. We can do that too.
mean,
We're
that's just
trying
me.
to, we're
I mean,
trying to like
again,
balance a couple of different things,
Again,
but
because
yeah.
there's so
that's-
many variables. Again, for me,
Yep.
the community center, the door diet and the transportation.
Problem.
Those, for me, those are the main keys before anything else happens.
Right, and I think some of the public outreach could happen at different times, right? You know, and all that, we can work that out. So like, so that certain things can even, they don't have to be all like the phase two could have some outreach or some planning phases starting while phase one projects are, really
Yeah.
kicking up. So it's just, it's it's complicated because of there's a lot of moving pieces. And a lot of things out of our control.
You can say one
I'll
thing.
say one thing. I want to sort of fall on my sword a little bit here because sort of the way that this was arranged was sort of like my Frankenstein idea. But the reason that we arranged it that way, and to your point, absolutely, you're right. This was meant to be, these are three major pushes of engagement, right? So when the public is going to see us like going very hard on engagement and then taking a break, and then you'll see us at the farmer's market, and then you won't see us until the next spring.
Yeah, it's
So-
actually not the projects, it's actually so the title on the page is engagement, not projects. It's not the project, it's actually, this piece is about the engagement part, not the project part.
And that's
That-
fine.
that's right.
If that's what we want to do, then that's
think
fine. But
that's-
then the portion of that, I guess, when you said engagement, then we should be removing at least the portion of the construction.
We can leave,
Because I think those are
yes,
very confusing.
absolutely.
We will
When it
happily
makes it-
circulate an updated version. My sincere apologies.
No apologies. I think that, you get very close to it when you're working on it and, that's why we have the work session because this is a draft and we want your input and if
That's
it's
fine.
hard to communicate to a lot of different people who process differently. So we want to make sure we're getting it as right as possible. So this is most helpful.
To my right? You're done, right? Wait, were you not done? Oh, no. Sir?
He's good? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I'm trying to,
People are allowed to think before they speak. It's perfectly allowed.
no.
Thinking
So
is a good thing.
Okay. Good idea, Fairy. Myself here, recognize, I'm just putting something on the table. You don't have to actually do anything with it, okay? Additionally to the kind of flow chart that you have in the Prezi and the Gantt chart style, it could also be helpful because we have and I forget what it's called, but on the village website, the story map to use that to show changes over time, right? So say like if like phase one is, even if it's just like a heat map to say, hey, in 2024, here's a heat map of like where stuff's happening. And then you can click in and get more detail. Because even something like that can show over time where things are happening across the village and that can help to cement in people's brain. So that's, but I'm like, that's like a whole thing. I don't know if you really want to,
Well, actually, we're updating that's the whole point of it. So as we put our dates on the calendar, we can put that into that map too, as another resource for people to go. And when we make these changes, we can also push them out like through posting and saying, this is what's going on, check the map, we've got changes coming type of thing and direct people that way too. So there's a lot of sort of cross-pollination of how we're gonna disseminate this information and try to reach people in as many ways as possible. So absolutely. Thank you. Good
Yeah.
idea, Ferry.
that was it. That was it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's like, wow, it's a lot, but, I'm excited to think this long term, a few years. And, to think that, in 10 years, what this village will be like is very exciting. I hope I live to see it. But, sorry.
Me both.
Where I feel right now, not so sure. No, it's very exciting and thanks. And I have no kibitzing on the presentation, but, you know, I've been following this closely, so I know what you're trying to do. So thank you.
So, you know, what I would say is the most important thing about the presentation is that it has to tell a story. And so the story is always, here are the projects. So the Gantt chart, sort of, again, it's really not a Gantt chart, because for a Gantt chart, certain things to the right don't get done till things on the left are completed. That's how Gantt charts actually work. So it looks like one, but it actually isn't, because if it were, that's all you would need. You don't actually need the rest of the presentation. It would be projects, order of importance, or order of operations, and the engagement will happen here when this happens, and if it has to be moved around. And I don't think the public is as interested in when contracts are, so the operational stuff. I do think they want to know that first order priority is community center, multimodal, lower, the streetscaping, and then, the lots, the housing, and, like the order of priority is important to people, like what's happening, interrelatedness, that doesn't change it shouldn't change. We're not supposed to change that. That should stay. What might change it is that papers came through, a contract or whatever, on this piece that we thought was project 3, maybe just became project 5, and that you can update. So I really think this should be, it's not just a presentation, our talking about it should be simplified. Because you should always do the engagement and say, the last page, you're actually right, the last page should be first. It's like, here it is. It's the map of the US. We're going to talk about New York today. And, but here's the US, but here's New York. And then you just say, these are the 5 projects coming up in the next 2 years. We're doing engagement, right? Because that's really what you actually presented, the two of you, is the engagement that will include. They don't happen exactly at the same time, because I think what people really care about is, tell me the project, tell me when it's starting, and if it moves, tell me that it moved. And I don't know, the grant didn't come through, the check wasn't signed, it's a different governor, who the hell knows? But that's what people care about. The interrelatedness is something that I think, Karen, you added in, which I think is really important, because most places that I see don't explain the interrelatedness. When you go to White Plains, there's a building going up here, there's tractors over there, there's a tunnel being built here. Nobody knows how they relate. They might relate to one another. What we've done is we've added a 4th dimension, right? It's like we've added if you do a 360-degree circle standing in the middle of our village on, Spring and Main, they're all related to one another, but they're also dependent. We talked about this. If you don't get the multimodal done, you're not going to be able to build some of this stuff. You can't build, like, there's a formula here, and it has to be followed. And we're going to have to pull out of things if we can't do that. That's in 5 minutes that I just said that, or 3 minutes, or whatever. I think that's what every conversation is about. This is the order. These are the things. This is the order. These are the updates. Now let's talk engagement for this particular project. Because engagement is what? It's either like you're listening for input on what you want to change or redo or rethink, or you're actually communicating outward. This is where we are, right? Because engagement is a conversation of listening and speaking. So the engagement is different from project to project also. Are you still looking for input? Community center, you're looking for input. Are you looking for multimodal for input on how many spaces, or, it's a different thing, right? Because it doesn't exist yet. Community center, people have many opinions, many opinions of what should be there. And if they had it their way, it would be 5 times the size based on the needs. So I think that's also different, and that dimension's hard to do on paper. I would just keep it very last page first, and then go, here's the whole picture. Now we're going to talk about this specific thing. I think it's great. I think progress has been made. I think some of it people aren't all that we're interested, but I think you put it on the website. I don't think, the contract is 6 months late because the governor's office is signing things only once. Who the hell knows? Whatever. Who cares? We don't control that. That just happens, and that's what we live with. So even in the bike thing, can't roll out in the winter. I'm sorry, just can't. That's just the way it goes. And I think that's just a footnote for most people. Anyway, this is great. There's a lot of projects. I get worried about how many projects we've taken on simultaneously with, with the same staff, but, good for you guys that you're still so getting it out there. And no, it is getting done. We're seeing a lot of things getting done. So I think, and that's actually great. And what else do we have?
So that concludes the community engagement
Okay.
portion. But
Valerie,
thank you, Valerie. And thank you for staying for community engagement and your input. We have Stuart and Dale are going to talk about our proposals for stormwater management services and permanent compliance activities. So with that, and then Stuart has a few other topics, which then we'll conclude our meeting.
The village treasurer and corporation council are going to now do a lightning round so that we can get through these things.
okay, I may actually get to use this as you go through each one.
Stuart, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, whoa, hey Dale, oh, who can't hear? Jamie, was that you?
That was me. I
What's going on
can't
with
hear
these mics
Stuart.
tonight? Okay, lightning rod was the topic at hand. Lightning round, speed dating, so to speak.
Okay, let's go. First is the proposal from D&B Engineers and Architects to the village to assist the village with compliance with the mandatory compliance with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation general permit for stormwater discharges from municipal separate stormwater sewer systems. They have been assisting, D&B has been assisting the village on this for a number of years. It's particularly important this year because as of January 3rd, 2024, there was a new permit issued by DEC, which must be complied with.
Okay.
While there is no annual reporting, there will be a report due in a couple of months, and then there's reporting due after that. The total cost with regard to D&B is $16,300. If the board is okay, we can have a resolution for this next week, and D&B can begin to get to work on this for that.
All right, anybody have any questions? Okay, next.
Okay, next is a contract we've had in the past. This is a contract for prisoner transportation. This is actually a contract that goes back to 2023, where we'll go to the end of 2024. Essentially, the county pays the village for transporting prisoners to and from county jail. It's generally a round trip rate. There are a few occasions where there might be an hourly rate, but generally it is the per trip rate. And this would be a resolution authorizing the village manager to sign the prisoner transportation zone rate agreement with the county, specifically the County Department of Correction.
Are there different zone rates for?
Yes. Yes.
No, I mean like from municipality to
Yes,
municipality?
For example, Tarrytown, the round trip is $231.61. Ossining, the round trip is $243.21. Pelham Manor, $266.39.
So the county sets the rates. We have
Yeah.
nothing to do with
We
it.
have nothing to do with it. All
And
set
they
by the
have
county.
I'm sorry? Okay, it's like a cab.
All set by the county.
All right, so we don't control this. This is just an agreement. I'm surprised they don't do it for 2 or 3 years, that they do this every year.
Well,
but
this is
okay.
actually a 2-year agreement, but I only received this recently. It actually
Oh,
started in
excellent.
2023.
Okay, next.
So that'll be a resolution. Next,
Yes. Exemption.
one of the favorites that Dale and I have are SCAR petitions. And this year, a request from our assessor. First, the SCAR petitions. SCAR stands for Small Claim Assessment Review. We have, if I'm counting correctly, Dale, 11 properties this year for a total return of $5,303.55. This relates to 2024 tax year. These are all agreements that are reached between the assessor's office and the individual property tax owner or the company that's working on their behalf. And this would all go back to these individuals. And we do one of these every year. The other thing we have.
How much
this
was it
year-
last year? Do you know? Dale, how much was it last year?
Last year, it was $3,139.18. A little bit higher than last year.
The other thing we have this year, folks, this came from the assessor, there are 6 properties which there were errors made by the assessor in terms of the percentage of exemption from taxation. Generally, it's In most cases, these deal with the senior citizen exemptions. It's 50%. In some cases, it was inadvertently put in as 5%. So that was a mistake from the assessor's end. It has been corrected. The county has approved the correction. It does involve, as I said, 6 properties. The total amount there is $5,111.18. There would be a resolution to those individuals. There'd be a resolution authorizing the village treasurer to pay these individuals that total amount. And again, this is something that's already gone through the County Tax Commission. They've approved it. And this is as a request from the assessor's office. So there'll be 2 separate resolutions for that.
Okay. Any questions, guys, folks? No?
Last, I'll turn it over to Dale, and then it'll come back to me. We have a 2024 capital budget adjustment for DPW Mason dump trucks. Dale?
Thank you, Stuart. Good evening, Mayor and Board.
Evening.
During the budget process, we had a couple of capital projects that we had put as to be determined. At that time, the board wasn't ready or didn't have enough information as we were going through the process to establish the final board approved column. And this was one of the projects for 2 Mason dumps for our DPW department. I had written a brief memo highlighting the information received from DPW in regards to the 2 Mason dumps that are currently in use that are going to be replaced if the board approves these 2. One of them is a 2003 Mason dump, and one is a 2002 Mason dump. Both of these dump trucks have an excess of 150,000 miles on them. Their repairs are coming in higher due to being an older vehicle, including major engine repairs, as well as rust and body problems that are just going to cost more to fix as they get older. So I would like to propose this resolution for the March 6th meeting. The total for both Mason dumps is $181,080.40. We will be using surplus fund balance, which was part of the capital project plan established. They are slightly higher than we anticipated when we spoke about the capital plan. Originally, they were estimated to be 170,000 for both of these dumps. So a little bit higher now. But we would like to bring this forward at the next legislative meeting. Thank you.
What did I look at? The memo had 6 different vehicles. This is about 2 vehicles. Is that another?
That would be my memo. I'll get to next,
Oh,
Mayor,
that's
dealing
you?
with surplus.
So these are different because why are they different than what you're going to be presenting?
Because these were given to, the ones I'm talking about, the ones for DPW, these are not the dump trucks. These are ones they specifically asked to be sold as surplus and sold at auction. So I'm not familiar with the other 2. They haven't asked me about those 2. Yes.
These are ones that
These are new.
are in desperately needed, is my understanding.
Okay. All right. Any questions on that?
I do, just a comment. In general, I guess I don't have a problem. I think my concern will be, or my request for this year's budget is if any truck or any vehicle that is being proposed for us to put this as a capital project, information like this to be provided as a part of the budget presentation and not afterwards, because right now, even though we haven't even been in the first quarter of the year, $10,000, almost $11,000. It's actually higher than what it was. So my ask will be for any other vehicle that is in need of being replaced, that is actually something like this, a very detailed memo or explanation when they come in front of us, to have that in hand and not too late in the game, I guess.
Understood and appreciated, I think, and Dale can correct me if I'm wrong. I think in this particular instance, there were a list of vehicles that were slated for replacement. Because of conversations that happened at the board level during the budget time, we asked all of the departments to rank high, medium, and low based on what's their top priority. I believe at the time, these were a medium, which is why they were TBD, but their condition has worsened such in the last 6 months that the department is asking that it be expedited. So this was discussed as a medium, but now it has moved to a high.
To your point, though, Trustee Casada, we will make sure that we have a better understand that the department heads are a bit more aggressive in their assessment of vehicles at the budget season, because probably these should have been a high when that was presented.
I agree, and we'll absolutely put that on as
Yeah.
as
and
one of
Dale,
the
yeah, and Dale,
items.
and I think it will be helpful as well, and I know I have asked this before, is that the vehicle list
It's actually,
ready for the budget, not
Yes.
like for us to be asking for the budget,
Right.
but
It
actually
will
prior to the budget,
absolutely
because
be
that gives,
done.
that gives us an idea of, the year, the mileage, what are we actually looking for? So
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
that and talking about just throughout, police department included on this whole
Yep.
list.
No
So,
question.
Otherwise, it's just, hey, we need new trucks. These are old and beaten up, so we need new trucks. That's not actually like a business model.
No, it's not.
So, okay, we're all moving in the right direction here. We're close to, which is good. Thank God, like you didn't tell me it was double the price we thought, because then one of them wouldn't be approved. All right, now we're going on to the
Yes,
next
Thank you,
email.
Dale.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to Stewart's
These are the
list.
3 additional items that I sent to the board earlier. First is a request from DPW. There are 7 vehicles that they want to declare as surplus and sell at auction. And I've listed them for you. We've done this in the past. We have a contract with Auctions International. They sell the vehicles after they're declared surplus. So unless if there's no objection, we can have a resolution for that next week, declaring surplus and have these vehicles sold at auction, which, as I said, is a DPW request.
Anybody questions, comments? Okay, next.
Next deals with Indian Brook. This is the issue of builder's risk insurance. I know it's something fascinating to talk about at 10 o'clock at night, I promise you. It is, however, insurance that the village is required to procure for the project. We received 2 quotes. One is from Travelers, one is from Chubb. The Chubb quote will work out to $81,258 a year. This is a 37-month project, so we're talking about $250,000 plus taxes and fees. The Chubb policy actually provides broader coverage in most aspects than the Travelers coverage. The one issue deals with soft costs, but the limit of soft costs that Chubb has, which is $265,000 a month, is likely never to be hit by the village. Builder's risk is basically to protect the village if the area which is being constructed, the equipment that's coming in, or anything like that is destroyed, damaged, or basically out of commission. It is a requirement under our contract that the village procure this policy. This is in addition to any other policy that all the other contractors are getting. And just so you know, we have most of that insurance already lined up. So this would be a request to put a resolution before the board next week, which would authorize the village manager to basically sign the necessary documents, binding that insurance through Chubb Insurance for the builder's risk, which would probably go into effect sometime in mid-March.
So I don't understand, we own the equipment? We're insuring
No,
things
but-
that we
but-
don't
but if
own?
Anything happens, basically, it is an all-risk policy for all the work, temporary buildings, false work, materials, equipment that's both there and in transit. So anything that gets involved with the work, we would be insured for if in fact it got destroyed by earthquake, by flood, by damp, it's all covered. So
But the owner of that equipment and all that,
they have insurance.
they
as
have
well.
their own.
But this is
Okay.
specifically builder's risk is for the owner of the project, or the owner of the work.
Which would be us.
That's correct. And,
All right.
and that, just so that the board is aware, the price of the premium is based upon the cost of the project. The estimated cost is approximately $98 million, and that's what they use to determine what the premium would be. So that would be, that. Are there any questions from the board?
See that, see, then, doesn't hear that, we're okay.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I thought you had questions, no, I have questions, I guess, I have one question.
yes, sir.
Where is that money coming from?
I've discussed this with Dale. Initially, there is an insurance line in the contract. There may be the need to move some money around
Okay.
to do that, but there is an initial amount of money in an insurance line to at least get this started, but there will at some point have to be some money moved around.
Okay, so I'm assuming part of that it'd be included on this budget year, moving forward for the next ones, correct?
Is that an annual one, Stuart, that amount?
The 81,258, Dale, is annual. Over 3 years, it'll be 250,546 plus taxes and fees.
Right, we have about 25,000 in left in our insurance line.
I'm sorry,
and
I'm
with-
sorry, 25,000? Okay, I didn't.
Yes, and then we have monies in contingency in the water fund that can do the balance of it
For this year?
for this year, yes.
Okay,
And then next year, we'll budget the full item in the insurance line.
okay. But then I guess. I'm not even gonna ask. All right, thank you.
Next.
Okay, last is a request to authorize the village manager to sign a proposal from Cablevision Lightpath. They are to provide local area network services to the police department. And that total cost is $90,000. It's $1,500 a month for 60 months. What was explained to me, because I got an email today from let's just see what her title is, Senior Account Manager in Government Education for Lightpath. What she wrote is this: in 2017, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, in connection with the MTA's Police Department, entered into an agreement with the Harris Corporation for the design, build, operation, and maintenance of a digital P25 trunk radio system, referred to as the Metropolitan Regional Radio System, that is designed to provide coverage from 65 transmitter sites located in 5 geographic zones, with each zone including 2 distributed control points and connecting 3 core switching locations. You know there are folks who understand this. She then goes on to say, that said, Lightpath, in partnership with the MTA Police, is implementing a solution to meet the needs to basically put this program in play. For the village, there will be 3 locations for this local area network. The first is going to be at OPD headquarters. The next is going to be part of the MTA Police Department zone. And the third will also be at the MTA Police Department headquarters, which is in Manhattan. Lightpath will be building a new fiber network into 88 Spring Street, while services going into Long Island City and Manhattan are being added to the already existing network. Following execution of the service order, Lightpath and OPD will arrange a kickoff meeting for the purpose of introducing the Lightpath project director and things like that. I have sent this proposal to our IT consultant just to make sure it is consistent with what we're already doing through our IT consultant. But it was sent to us by OPD, specifically the chief and Sergeant Donahue. So I'm bringing it to you folks. As I said, it is $1,500 a month over 60 months, so that's $90,000. And this would be, again, a resolution authorizing the village manager to sign the Lightpath proposal. Again, I have sent this to our IT consultants, our IT security consultant, as well as to Christina LeBeau, to comment as to whether anything that Lightpath is planning has any issue with regard to what is already going on in terms of the village's IT system. But
So I don't understand actually what this project is. I don't understand why Metro North Police is not paying for it, why we're paying for it. I
Metro
don't
North has already paid for all the back office work.
doesn't matter why they're not paying for their share of this. I don't know what gets us because that doesn't explain it. I don't know what happens if we say no, what do we not get? I mean, I would start with if we say no, what happens? Because I just need to understand what it supports. It might be the greatest thing since sliced bread. I have no issue with that. So somebody needs in English to explain to us and maybe our IT people to tell us what this actually does.
I
and
can,
what-
I could
Oh,
shed,
you know?
I could shed some light on it. The OPD is going onto the Metro North bandwidth
Mhm.
for their new radios. So it's a whole separate system. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. All of this is all new to me. You know, I just, why during budget, if
Why
this,
this did come up?
right?
I have no answer to.
No, I'm just making a statement, that's all.
So some human should come in front of us and explain this to us, not in a letter, and tell us, this is what it gets you, and if you don't do it, this is what you lose out on, and this is how long it's good for, and next year it goes up by 15%, and it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, which is why we need it, because when we say like, yes, 5,000, 50,000, 500,000, I mean, at the very least, like, somebody should understand what we're saying yes to. I mean, I'm just saying, it's, and, you know, in the OPD, they should know that this should really be part of budget next year, like, we shouldn't get a letter in February. And I'm sure there were good intentions. I'm sure it's a great thing. I just, like, I'm like not the dumbest person here, and I don't understand what this is. Like, somebody has to explain it.
Then
And, you know,
I will be happy to hold it and make sure that either the chief or the sergeant come and explain it to you.
or the IT person could maybe.
Well, the
also.
IT people have thus far not.
Yeah, they're not
responded to me,
into
So
the-
therefore, I really think it's the only people who could answer.
Yeah, I
Once
think
it
that
goes-
they're in a sense facilitating something that's,
Okay,
you know,
So-
so,
okay, so let's just get somebody to explain this.
yeah. Yeah,
and-
it's really, the
This-
IT people are the middlemen here.
So
Okay.
Stuart, and I'm sorry.
So is Stuart in that sense.
Yes.
So Stuart, quick question. And then what you were reading that part of that memo from MTA, you meant you brought up 2017?
This was passed and the agreement was done in two thousand
That's
seventeen.
what I wanted.
Yeah,
In 2007.
in the beginning.
In the
you started
beginning, you
with
started, you were
focus
reading.
person.
2017, they entered into an agreement with,
Right.
with the Harris Corporation to design, build for that metropolitan regional radio system. That is
Okay,
correct.
Okay.
all right. So,
Listen,
but
it
there was
sounds
no
great.
communications at that time with, okay, I guess we'll find out
I
more
can-
from.
I
OPD.
really can remember my kids' names from
No,
two
but
thousand.
they-
Well, my recollection though, because I vaguely remember, you know, in previous discussions is that this is, one of those things I don't know that there's a choice to it. And I think, this is kind of a have to, as far as Metro North skin in the game on this and what's being done. I don't know if, unfortunately, that we're going to have as much control as we would like to, but those are
No,
all
and-
very valid
That's fine.
questions to
No,
be
no,
had,
we just
And I
need to-
agree.
you know.
That's fine, we all agree,
And
but
it-
I need somebody to explain it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause we agree in buying new radios for the police department.
Right.
We knew that
Right.
portion coming. I think the part that we didn't know is that we have to be making this additional.
And then
payment.
next month, we'll
Right.
get another email about.
I know, I think that for clarification for everybody, it's important to really go beyond and explain all of
Okay.
this.
I'm gonna say I believe that the MTA bandwidth was a choice.
Okay,
I-
that,
Because the fire department's different. County changed everything on us. We have no
Right.
choice. Otherwise, we won't be able to communicate with the fire
Okay, so
department
we're all gonna
radios.
learn that.
That's
I'm
two
sure
different
this is
things.
all fine.
Okay,
Just
But
yeah,
that
well,
we-
maybe
I could
that's
be
what I'm-
wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a choice to go to MTA's
All right,
bandwidth.
So Stuart,
not sure, yeah.
get
You
somebody
might
in
be right.
here who understands what this is and can explain it to us.
Yeah,
And-
I'm
and what
sure-
they
I'm
already
sure that-
agreed to on the behalf of this community.
Sure.
With
Can
that,
I,
do we have a motion to adjourn?
Somebody had something to say. Dale?
I was just going to add with their 2024 budget, they did have a detail line in their telephone internet expenditure line for MTA radio LTE. and then countywide radio LTE. And those two amounts add up to, almost 11,000 in that budget line
11,000, what, a month, a year, or what?
for the year.
But that's not 11,000, that's,
No, this is 1,500 a month. So it'll
oh,
be a
so
total.
that's 15,000.
Right, but 1,500 a month over 60 months is the $90,000.
Okay, but it's 1,500 a month for the year, that may be part of that. Okay, somebody can just tell us what's happening. It would be
Yes.
nice to just know. Okie dokie.
Okay,
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Do we have a motion to adjourn
To
into
exec-
executive session for matters of personnel and, I guess, legal?
legal, Yeah.
So moved.
legal.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen. We're back next Wednesday at the courthouse. It is now 10:16. Meeting adjourned. Sorry, that was very loud.